cost of living. The Chancellor says she is cutting the VAT on ticket prices to help families enjoy the school holidays. Nighttime Industries Association Chief Executive Mike Kill has told LBC it's a short-term measure.
I think the challenge that we've got at the moment, it feels very tokenist and it feels very sort of low level. I have a young family. I can see the benefits over the summer, but this is a very, very short-term proposition for a summer period. And I think there are greater economic opportunities ahead. So my big position on this, and definitely the industry, is the Chancellor should go further.
Children aged between 5 and 15 will also be able to travel for free on buses in England in August. Rachel Reeves also says supermarkets should pass on savings from reductions to import tariffs on more than 100 food products. Newly released documents reveal the late Queen pushed for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor to be given a prominent role in politics. A government memo shows she was very keen for him to become the UK trade envoy in 2001. The former Prince Andrew stepped down in 2011 over concerns about his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. He continues to deny wrongdoing. The Foreign Office has summoned Israel's top diplomat in the UK over what it calls an inflammatory video of detainees posted online. There's been international condemnation after Israel's security minister was seen taunting activists apprehended by Israeli forces. Claire Azuga's father, Malcolm Ducker, was part of the flotilla aiming to deliver aid to Gaza. She spoke to LBC this morning.
Well, at first I felt physically sick and I actually had to go and talk to a friend first to counsel myself so I could actually face them. I knew he was there. And actually I later watched it back and a friend's mother pointed out her son, who's a good friend of mine. And then not far from him, I saw my father's spine. I would recognise his spine anywhere. And I noticed that his hands were not behind his back because he can't get his hands behind his back. So instead they were tied around his neck.
5 people have been arrested on suspicion of fraud in connection to the local elections in Greater Manchester. Police say they receive reports of concerns about candidates in the St Peter's ward of Thameside Council. It's understood it follows claims fake independent candidates were put forward to try to split the vote. And net migration has fallen below 200,000 for the first time since the start of the pandemic. In the 12 months to December, it fell by almost half to 171,000. Minister for Migration and Citizenship, Mike Tapp, has told Tonight with Andrew Marr they're cautiously optimistic about the figures.
This is a step towards where we want to be. You know, an 82% drop in net migration is really encouraging. And we've achieved that by making, skilled worker visas to degree level, higher English language. We've also taken around 100 occupations off the list that can use foreign workforces. There's also a lot of work to do on illegal migration.
Some analysts say it's largely down to policies introduced by the Conservatives in early 2024. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 11 points at 10,443. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather, rain lingering in the north tonight. This will become confined to the far north later, mostly clear elsewhere, a low of 9. Cloud and showers for the north tomorrow with heavier rain by the evening. Elsewhere, it's a mostly sunny and warm day, highs of 28 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 7:03 on LBC. Welcome to the programme. It's Iain Dale here with you until 10. Don't forget, you can watch the whole show now on Global Player. I say watch the whole show as well as listen to it on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel. Now, I want to talk about immigration today, which is one of those subjects that we seem to talk about incessantly. Part of the reason is because it is now in the top 3 subjects or top 3 policy areas that voters are most concerned about. So when we hear from the Office for National Statistics that the net migration figure in this country is now down to 171,000, I think that is worthy of comment because in 2020, was it 2023 or 2024? It was nearly 1 million net migration. So I think a lot of people will think that is unalloyed good news. You heard Mike Tapp, the immigration minister, on with Andrew Marr, describing it exactly in those terms. There are some people who think that we shouldn't have any net migration at all, that they would like it to be down to zero. I think that is mistaken, because the economy various areas of the economy will always need migrants. But I want to pick out one particular aspect of these figures, which I think does show cause for concern, because it's estimated that 136,000 more British nationals left the country than returned in the year to December 2025. Now, among young people aged 16 to 34, 75,000 more left than returned in that period. That is the highest number on record. Now, I don't think anybody should think that that is not a worrying statistic. The highest net emigration of young people aged 16 to 34. And that is partly because more people have decided not to return to the country than ever before. So that's what I really want to discuss in this hour. How concerned should we be by this? And what can we do to make this country more attractive? A, to keep young people here, and B, to attract them back. Maybe you're a young person who is thinking of going abroad for maybe just a year or two, or maybe permanently. Give me a call now, 0345 6060 973. Well, let's have a word with our reporter, Thea Rickard, who's been poring over these figures, haven't you, Thea? The joys of this job.
Of course I have, Ian, of course, especially for you as well. Well, let's just go through some of these figures that we've seen today from the Office for National Statistics. So we've learned that net migration to the UK has dropped to its lowest level since 2021. Now, if we don't include the pandemic years, it's actually its lowest since 2012. That is, of course, a huge decrease, down from 944,000 in the year to March 2023 to an estimated 171,000 in the year to December 2025. Now, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, of course, claiming this as a victory today, saying figures show the government's delivering on his promises to restore control to the borders. But one figure catching a lot of attention, as you've alluded to, has been emigration figures of young people. So the Office for National Statistics says these have remained relatively stable. They've actually declined slightly over the last year. However, what's significant is the level of negative net migration in the 16 to 24 and 25 to 34 age groups. So that's the number of young people who'd been expected to come back to the UK, but who haven't. And 75,000 more people actually left than arrived in 2025. So the Office for National Statistics says this gap between people leaving and people arriving has actually grown every year since 2022. They say this may suggest that young Brits who move abroad for work are staying there longer, or that students who study overseas are then staying out there for work instead of coming back to the UK. They say that getting data on where and why British people are moving abroad is quite difficult, but the UN figures that we have at the moment show there's huge numbers of expats, both in Australia and the United States. So perhaps students or young people going travelling there and choosing to stay there rather than coming back to the UK.
Going to the overall figures, though, it does seem remarkable that they've come down from 944,000 to 171,000 within 2 years. Is there any explanation for that?
Well, a lot of people are saying that this is because of policies that the Conservative government put in and that Labour have kept with. So, for example, carers for coming into the UK from other countries now aren't allowed to bring family members as much as they were before. That is one policy that is being sort of regarded as... And
students as well, I guess.
Students. There's a number of policies that are definitely being kind of labelled as contributing to this. But interesting that, you know, the Prime Minister very much claiming this as Labour's kind of victory today, but very much worth alluding to the fact that the Conservative government did put a lot of these measures in place.
Thea, thank you very much indeed. That's Thea Rickard there, LBC's reporter. Robert Bates joins me now, Research Director for the Centre for Migration Control think tank. Robert, very good evening to you. Let's talk about the generality first of all. What lessons should we draw from these statistics?
I think the main takeaway is that the measures introduced at the end of the Conservative government to reverse measures that they had introduced themselves to clamp down on students and care workers bringing dependents has definitely had an impact, a long-term impact. I do also think some of the measures introduced by the current government on care visas, entry care visas, and effectively ending that route as well is definitely played into this. I think actually the levels we're still seeing in terms of visa grants is 750,000 grants by the Home Office to the year ending March 2026. Only about 21% of those were to work main applicants. So there are still a significant proportion of individuals on student visa routes, which seems to be one of the only visa routes that is staying at relatively stable levels, keeping those numbers high. I also think emigration levels, when you consider that we did see a spike during those Boris Johnson years, are not quite as high as you would perhaps expect. You expect to see a sort of period of higher emigration following a spike of immigration as visas come to an end. That's not quite transpired, and that's because of an increase of visa extensions being awarded by this government on certain visa routes, such as the graduate visa. So there's a mixed picture of who's contributed towards the current figure. I also think, we do need to consider that we did see a huge spike and whether actually reverting to levels that were last seen in 2012, and people did still feel immigration was too high, whether that is an appropriate response to what we saw under the last Conservative government.
I don't know if you've seen any projections, but how do you think these figures are going to change over the next 2 or 3 years?
Well, some estimate that it will, continue to fall and we'll be heading towards net zero immigration. I think actually the far more likely result is, and I think this is something that the OBR corroborates, is it will settle around about 200,000 for the foreseeable future, and that will become the status quo. It is just our immigration system at the moment is in such a churn because of the extraordinary policies that were pursued between 21 and 24 that we're still sort of trying to calibrate exactly where we stand. But I think going forward, we could expect about 200,000 if nothing else changes.
So let's look at the younger age group, 16 to 34, where, there has to be a bit of concern about the number of young people who are not only leaving, but then not coming back.
Yeah, I think so. When you consider the OBR suggests that, by the time an individual born in Britain hits the age of 16, they've had, north of £300,000 almost invested, for lack of a better term, into them through education and healthcare and so forth. And then those individuals are leaving and not sort of being economically productive in this country. There's a fiscal element to this. I also just think it is an element of churn as well in terms of the population. If you have sort of your best and brightest leaving, going to university, and then looking at the labour market in the UK for young people and thinking, actually, my prospects of getting a career kick-started are probably best spent in Australia or the United States, then I think there are certain questions that we need to ask ourselves as a country about what we are doing to encourage young people in this country to actually help drive our economy forward. We know we've got roughly 1 million Brits, young Brits that are economically inactive, not in employment or not in training of any sort. And I think actually this really is the key takeaway of the emigration figures is we need to be doing more to support Brits in the workforce. But we also then need to consider, on the other hand, the element of home ownership. The percentage of 16 to 34-year-olds that owned a home in 1997 was about 55%. It's fallen down now to about 35%. So there is a drop in that, and people therefore aren't owning homes, putting down roots in the country, and then going out to find employment to meet that end. And I think actually, unfortunately, people in their early stages of their lives are in a state of flux a lot longer, and therefore moving abroad or staying abroad does seem like a more viable option.
I don't know whether the statistics show this, but I've always thought that there is a certain number of people each year who make the decision to leave this country for whatever reason, generally because they think they will have a better standard of life in somewhere like Australia, Canada, New Zealand maybe. And then when they get there, they find that the grass is not always greener on the other side and return to this country pretty quickly sometimes. Are there any statistics sort of covering that?
Well, there's no specific. I think basically the best indicator we do have on that is the return immigration of British nationals, and the fact that that is falling does suggest that we are having people stick where they do choose to go for longer periods of time, and that is why actually the overall net figure has been going in the wrong direction, because people are going to study or they are going to Australia to work in an ostrich farm or something and thinking, actually, I quite like how things over here compared to what they would be back in Britain. And I think actually when it comes to enticing these individuals back, we need a wholesale change in our approach to the labour force, and recognising that young Brits are an asset and something that should be nurtured rather than something that actually we could use migration to plug gaps straight away, because many people now are simply feeling that the economy isn't working for them. And
do we have any stats on which are the most popular countries for Brits to emigrate to?
Yeah, well, as your reporter indicated, we're having to use sort of global databases or databases from other countries, but there's very clear patterns of older people seem to be going to Spain and Italy, obviously, for the weather. But then when it comes to the younger people, we are seeing America, Australia, Canada, Anglosphere countries being chief amongst that list. And I think that again indicates that this willingness for individuals when they are emigrating from Britain to hit the ground running, as it were, and to have none of that friction from language and so forth, or cultural distance, and to be able to sort of fully integrate themselves almost straight away into the labour force in those countries.
And is there? I mean, could you come up with an ideal figure of net immigration to this country? Because I think there are some politicians, mainly predominantly on the right of British politics, who think that no immigration might be quite good. I'm not sure that there's that many of them, but there are some. And then there are people on the other side, on the far left of British politics, who basically want open borders. Well, I think we can probably both agree that neither of those things are probably the best way forward for the country. But is there a sort of ideal? David Cameron reckoned it should be tens of thousands a year rather than hundreds of thousands.
Well, I think we've seen, haven't we, since 2010, this idea of targets and caps somewhat being illusory and not actually helping the debate in any way. I do think there needs to be a significant reduction even from where we are looking like we are going to be landing of 200,000. I think, tens of thousands, and I'm going to disagree with you, maybe even net zero immigration, given what we have seen over the last 10 years, is the most appropriate path forward, because a million plus people coming in one single year, many of them staying for longer periods of time. We do know that, for instance, there are 1.2 million economically inactive foreign nationals in the country. And you kind of have to think, well, we can't continue to allow business just to pull the lever of immigration. And actually, it is a time to set those sort of stretching targets and to maybe try and shake things up and get business going, and recognising they need to invest in people that are already here rather than just constantly relying on importing individuals that have come from other countries.
OK, thank you very much. That's Robert Bates, Research Director for the Centre for Migration Control think tank. Let me just read out this text because I think it shows from a human level why people are moving. James says, I'm moving to the Middle East in September. I'm 38 years old, married with 2 kids. We can't afford for my wife to go back to work and put 2 kids in childcare. We earn good money but don't see any of it. I was offered a job which is tax-free and housing included. My wife won't have to work while the kids are so young. The UK will support people off work but won't support people in work, completely backwards with tax. Looking forward to your calls on this. 0345 6060 973. It's 17 minutes past 7.
LBC.
Feel every pass and every goal. Discover the next generation of televisions at John Lewis. Experience the full clarity of the latest RGB and OLED technology. Brought to you by some of the world's best brands. Price matched against 25 leading retailers with a 5-year guarantee on all TVs. Your best view of every game is available right now at John Lewis. It's football upgraded. T's and C's and exclusions apply. See johnlewis.com for details.
With problem earwax, things don't feel quite right. The NHS recommends using olive oil to help relieve build-up, so Otex offers medical-grade olive oil in both drops and spray. But if you need to act faster, there's Otex Express. However you choose to treat it, choose the earwax treatment brand most recommended by pharmacists, and be clear to hear with Otex. Based on a survey of 200 pharmacies. For verification, visit otexear.com.
From the producers of Yellowstone,
welcome to Taxation.
Beth and Rip are back.
A legacy is a beautiful thing.
A new original series.
But only if it survives.
Family is the only thing worth fighting for.
This life here is gonna work, isn't it?
We'll make it work.
I can make this a lot harder for all y'all.
Then peace will have to wait.
Dutton Ranch. Stream now only on Paramount Plus. T's and C's apply. Subscription required. 18+.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 19 minutes past 7 on LBC. If you just tuned in, we're talking about the migration figures that have come out today from the Office for National Statistics. They show that in the last year, 171,000 people came to, well, more than that came to the country, but there's a net migration figure of 171,000. The aspect we're concentrating on is why so many people in the 16 to 34 age group are leaving. Quite like to hear from you if you are somebody who's thinking of emigrating. I'd love to hear your reasoning, why you're doing it. Is it because I think there is this sense of national malaise in this country at the moment where we've come to the conclusion that we're not a great country anymore, that the economy isn't working for enough people, that we're crime-ridden and all the rest of it. I think most of that is complete poppycock, actually. We are no more crime-ridden than any other Western country. In fact, in many ways, not as much as some. I think there is an argument that the economy isn't working for everyone. That social contract that we all thought we enjoyed has gone, in that people can't afford to buy their own house in the way that they would have done 30 or 40 years ago. I think a lot of younger people have come to the conclusion that the economy doesn't offer them the opportunities that they want. But we never talk about the other side of it, the things that really are still great about this country and why people should stay. So it's your chance to give me a call and tell me whatever decision you've made, whether you have decided to go or whether you've decided that the grass is not always greener on the other side. 0345 6060 973. David is in Northwich. Hello, David.
Hello, yeah. You're going to have to help me with this one.
Try.
Well, the past few years, net migration's far too high. We have to go it down. Nigel Farage, the whole of the right-wing media, stamping their feet, get it down. Well, it's come down. You've got your wish. And now you're trying to spin it that it's absolutely bizarre. What a pathetic excuse. It's the wrong people that are leaving now. I mean, give us a break. How embarrassing is this country? How embarrassing is the media?
Are you accusing me of this?
I'm accusing most of the media. Tom Swarbrick was on it earlier saying exactly the same thing. It's the wrong people that are leaving.
Well, I don't think I've said that.
What is going on? Talk about gaslighting the public.
In what way?
My wife's had a terrible accident. She's in hospital at the moment. And she's been taken care of by a lot of maybe non-British nationals, I don't know, brown people, black people, majority of them are taking care of her, taking brilliant care of her, terribly thankful for their help. Would you prefer that they left?
Well, I don't know how long you've been listening to this programme for, David, but I was in hospital on 2 separate occasions and I made exactly the point that you've just made, and you seem to be under the impression that I'm somehow anti-immigration, and nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, I've self-described as wet as a lettuce on immigration, so I think you're attacking the wrong person here.
Well, maybe I am, and if I am, I apologise, but the whole premise of Tom Swarbrick's show, and it seems you're taking the same tack now, is that we seem to be saying, oh, yeah, immigration's coming down, but it's the wrong people that are leaving. It's the good people that are leaving and not the bad people. I've
said nothing along those lines at all. All I've questioned is why so many young people seem to think that the grass is greener on the other side, and I don't think that everybody always finds that. Look, if somebody makes a decision to emigrate to another country, good luck to them. I hope they're successful, because if it turns out that you realise you've made the wrong decision and then come back, that's not a good place to be, is it?
So what's the problem then? If people want to leave,
I don't know what your problem is, frankly, because you keep accusing me of things I haven't said or thought.
No, I'm just saying the whole idea is that the spin that's being put on it now is that it's the wrong people that are leaving. That good people
do you think that it's good that an increasing number of young people are leaving the country? I don't.
To be honest, I'm quite happy that the people that are looking after my wife are staying. And I want them to stay.
Well, You're talking at completely cross purposes here. I'm talking about young people in this country, British nationals, who are leaving the country for whatever reason. And I don't think it's a mark of a successful country when quite a lot of young people decide that they think going to another country would be better.
What's unsuccessful about this country now? I thought we had the highest growth in the G7. I mean, where are we doing so badly now then?
I'm not saying... I mean, again, you're accusing me of saying something that I haven't said. I don't know why your ears seem to be closed to what I'm saying.
No, but the whole talk show, exactly the same as Tom Swarbrick's earlier on, was saying, we've got these figures. We've all been saying, net migration should come down. It's come down, but all of a sudden it's not a very good thing because it's the good people that are leaving.
Well, have that conversation with Tom Swarbrick then. He can answer for himself. I'm answering for myself.
You're having exactly the same conversation.
No, I'm not. You think I am, but I'm not. And I think everybody that's listening knows that you're wrong and that I haven't said anything of the kind of sort of things you've been accusing me of.
I'm not accusing of anything. I'm saying your talk show is exactly the same as Tom Swarbrick's. You're highlighting that people are leaving, and it's the type of people that we don't want to leave.
It's not type of people, it's young people. And if you think that it's a good thing that young people are leaving the country, well, I don't know what logic you're using for that.
The people want to emigrate. I don't understand what the problem is.
Well, I've frankly given up explaining it to you, David. As I say, if you think that it's a good thing for any country, whether it's this country or another country, to lose a lot of its young people to other countries, then you're living on a strange planet.
Maybe you can't argue anymore that if we get rid of a load of immigrants, the country will be a lot better.
I've never argued that we should get rid. I've never argued that we should get rid of immigrants.
I'm not saying you, but
you just did.
The general idea is from the media is that if we get rid of people,
it's all the media's fault now, right? Okay, it's all the media's fault. That's the laziest argument you can ever put forward. Do you not think people have minds of their own?
I've got a mind of my own, and I'm trying to express it.
Well, it's not a very clever one, if you don't mind me saying so. I think we'll move on, shall we? Let's go to Mary, who's a new caller in Los Angeles. Hello, Mary.
Hello there. I'm also just calling to say I've left the UK in the last 12 months and moved to Los Angeles, California. I'm obviously higher than the age group of 16 to 34. I am 37. But it was one of the best decisions I've ever made because salaries here are 3 to 4 times higher. Making a 6-figure salary is so incredibly easy to do so. Taxes here on income are lower, so you can take home a lot more money. I was unable to start a family in the UK because literally if my salary of $36,000 and my partner is on a similar salary, we were able to start a family here because the two of us working easily $200,000 to $300,000 per annum salary that we get to keep. Weather is amazing. We do, of course, miss the UK. We do come back to visit family, but I think we're kind of like in that group of exodus of people, especially working in the creative industry, in the film industry, which the UK does not have. Getting opportunities.
Yeah, of course it has a film industry.
Yeah, of course. That's the industry I work in. But what I mean is I was also working in the film industry in the UK, much smaller. Again, salaries, income. For us here, being able to make 100,000 or more is a lot easier than having to do that in the UK, and also the taxes being a lot lower.
What public services do you think are better than the UK?
I wouldn't necessarily say all of them. Obviously, America being a very capitalist country to live in, there is the pros and cons of being obviously here versus the UK and UK versus here. But I have to say, in terms of being able to make the income and maybe one day coming back to the UK to have that and be able to get on the property ladder, it is very advantageous to just at least come out here for a few years, if not for the long haul, and then come back home to be able to get on that property ladder.
How much do you have to pay for health insurance?
So it's covered, actually, funny enough, by my work. They also include things like fertility treatment, dentist, therapy, a lot more things that I think that you'd have to actually pay out of pocket in the UK. So on average, companies like Netflix, they give you $95,000 to spend on fertility treatment if you wanted to have fertility treatment. And that's just included. And insurance, health insurance is given, and for your partners and so forth. And also my partner being in the film industry, they have unions, and the unions literally provide the best healthcare in the entire country.
What do you miss about the UK?
I do. I mean, the food, weather, my family, friends. I do come back maybe 4 times a year. Probably at this point, probably spend more time in the UK than I do in Los Angeles. But to have the freedom, I think it's almost working towards have the option to be at least 50% in the UK or 50% in America. But I think it's just being able to create options for yourself. In a way that if I was staying at home in the UK, I just wouldn't be able to do that on a small income.
Well, best of luck. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Nick says the government is going to hail this as a great success, but A, it's mostly driven by changes brought in by Rishi Sunak after Boris wave madness, and B, look at those 246,000 Brits, many of them bright young people, leaving our shores to seek a better life abroad. Well, let's talk a bit more about that and try to ask, well, how can we prevent that happening? I think there is a sense of national malaise in this country at the moment, and it feeds down particularly to young people who may have come to the conclusion that the economy isn't going to give them the opportunities they want, so they automatically think, well, it must be better elsewhere. I wonder if it really is, though. 0345 6060 973. It's 7:30 news time on LBC with Amelia Cox.
It'll be cheaper to visit attractions like theme parks, zoos and museums this summer. The Chancellor has announced a cut to VAT on tickets as part of efforts to ease the cost of living. The late Queen was very keen for Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor to take a prominent role in promoting Britain's national interests. The government has released the latest documents on his appointment as a UK trade envoy. And a fundraiser has been started to help pay the funeral costs for 3 sisters whose bodies were found in the sea off Brighton Beach last week. Police are still trying to work out exactly what happened. LBC weather, rain lingering in the north tonight. This will become confined to the far north later. Mostly clear elsewhere, a low of 9 degrees.
LBC.
The following is from TfL.
My name was Luna, like the moon. I was 2 days short of my 17th birthday when I was killed. My killer wasn't a bad man. He had a rescue dog called Frank and rang his mum every Sunday. He wasn't a speed freak. He just thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit. But that was enough to knock me off my bike and kill me.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Here's a tale of 2 commuters. Steve was in a rush and needed to park near the station. Jane also needed a space and booked in advance with Your Parking Space. Steve had a meeting at 9 and panic at 8. Nowhere to park. Jane, she's already in the office and enjoying that morning latte. With Your Parking Space, you can browse thousands of spaces across London and reserve one instantly. Use the code GET10 for £10 off your first booking. Download the Your Parking Space app today.
I'm in the kitchen with Charlie Bigham. So what have we got here, Charlie?
My brand new pan-fried pad thai noodles.
Noodles? But you're Mr. Fish Pie guy.
Guilty. And while ovens rule at roasting,
the pan is king of noodling.
Whether it's pad thai, yakisoba or laksa, finding that perfect texture is a bottomless noodle rabbit hole.
But all I have to do is stir it in the pan for 6 minutes, right?
Bingo! Try the new Charlie Bigham's Asian pan-fried noodle range. Handmade in my kitchen.
Pan-fried in yours.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
7:32 on LBC. We're talking about the new immigration figures that came out today, which will be celebrated by many because it's shown net migration is down to 2012 levels to 171,000. We're talking about the net migration figures for 16 to 34-year-olds, and they show a slightly worrying rise. Now, it's 75,000, and you can say, well, that's not that many, is it? But when it's quite clear that this number is on the increase, and it's partly because not so many people are returning to the country in that age group as before. It's not necessarily that there are more actual people leaving at the moment, which I suppose is something that we should celebrate, because I think we in the media have got to be careful about this, not to exaggerate the drift out of the country. But when the net migration figures go up, I think that is worthy of comment. 0345 6060 973. Ross is in Battersea. Hello, Ross.
Yeah, Ian, I hope you're doing well this evening.
Not too bad, thank you. What would you like to say?
Yeah, I'm just in that age group, 32. So I'm
clinging on by your fingertips.
Yeah, clinging on to it, and I keep calling myself young, as young as I can. I'm looking to move abroad. I work in a field that's pretty in demand internationally. I work in supply chain management. So, all the manufacturing countries like China, Middle East, they all want people with my skill set. I think the big problem that young people have in this country, especially ones that are skilled, is that there's just a general feeling, like you said, that a malaise that nothing gets done. And the previous caller mentioned taxes. Most people I speak to don't think that the tax itself is the issue. It's that we don't seem to get a return on investment.
Mm.
So, we pay higher and higher taxes every year. We have things like student finance, which is 9% extra tax in all but name. And we can't get a train system built. We can't get potholes filled. We can't know that we're not going to retire. They're thinking about they discuss putting up to 75. So we don't really get a return on investment. Whereas, my partner, for example, she lives in Hong Kong. They pay lower taxes than us. They have pretty good living standards. 90% of people in China overall own their own house. That kind of like improvement year on year that people do want isn't really seen in our future. People generally think, we're going to be poorer in the future and we'll be lucky if we ever buy a house. So they think, I'll go abroad, maybe I'll have that chance.
Are you looking to go abroad permanently or maybe for a few years?
I don't know, to be honest. I honestly don't know. My partner's Chinese. She's got Chinese, Hong Kong, Macau, and EU rights to live there, so she can live basically anywhere. So we're looking maybe permanent, but we're not 100%. It just depends on how my job situation works.
Because I mean, you're an interesting case because you have a foreign-born partner. I mean, inevitably, there's always been. I mean, going back maybe decades, maybe even hundreds of years, you've always had British nationals who meet somebody maybe on holiday, they fall in love, and they eventually get married. So there's always been a group of people who will always leave the country. But I think we live in such a globalised economy, a globalised world now, where it's much easier for people to travel and to live elsewhere, that inevitably I think there will always be an increase in the number of people that go down that path. I mean, I'm thinking in my friendship circle, I've certainly got at least 3 people that have done that. And if we were talking in 1960, it may have been 1. So there's always going to be an increase, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. And I think countries are becoming a lot more competitive with each other about attracting talented individuals. And I'm not talking about, the super high skilled people, but attracting people that do the grunt skilled work, the stuff that, it pays a good middle class wage, but you're never going to be a millionaire. And, to mention my partner, we met at university. She loves the UK. And she's, like you mentioned earlier, she said the grass isn't greener on the other side. Every country has its issues. The work culture in Asia is a lot more difficult than it is in the UK, for example. Australia, a lot more expensive. So the grass isn't as green as people think it is. So I hope a lot of the people that are looking at moving abroad do speak to people that live there, speak to recruiters that can give you an idea of what the living standards are going to be like. You're probably not going to go over there and have an easier time as you think it is.
I'm not sure it's ever as easy as people think it might be or should be. And inevitably, there's sometimes buyer's remorse. I think for anyone who's lived for, as you have, 32 years in this country, to move to any other country, there's always going to be a degree of culture shock that you're not used to some things. I mean, for example, if you go to Hong Kong or China, well, we know you're not going to have necessarily the same kind of freedoms which we take for granted in this country. But it's all about balances. You might trade that off for more positive things. Yeah,
definitely. I know of quite a few people that have moved to China. They work in software and that sort of industry, so it's not my thing, but it's in hot demand over there, and they don't really care about the whole, criticise the government thing, because they see their life improving.
Yeah.
And they see, I don't know if you've ever been to China long term, but I went there for a couple of months. I know it's not a long time, but you see just constant infrastructure development. They're like just throwing money at investing in their infrastructure, and then you come to the UK. We can't get a train system that was from the 1990s built properly without some corrupt business somewhere leeching money out of it. It just feels like the UK wants to tax you at European levels, but give you American levels of infrastructure investment and healthcare provision. So, if the UK government wants to fix things, they need to make it blaringly obvious to people that your money's getting spent in the right way. It's not just getting spaffed up the wall with some company that wants to take as much as it can.
Okay.
It's not just getting spent on old people, because young people, frankly...
Hang on. You're talking to someone twice your age, Ross. Be very careful.
Oh, I don't bemoan old people getting spending, but it does feel that a lot of the political...
No, the correct answer, Ross, was I'm not saying you're old, Ian.
Oh, I'm not saying I don't consider you old.
I do.
But, I feel like that sometimes when I stand up at work and I'm like, oh, my back cracked.
Right. Go on, final word.
Final word. It does feel like as a young person, the UK is basically a retirement home with an economy attached to it. Every time the government says we're going to spend on the young, they get a political kickback. We can't do that. We can't waste money on that. But when it's we don't want to give everything to the old, there's protests about it. There's the media talks about how they're going to starve grannies to death because of it. So, every country needs to care for its old, but it can't just focus on money for the old only. We see that now with the welfare budget. 177 billion of it is pensioners. We can't afford that kind of thing.
Totally agree with you. Well, I've been banging the drum to cancel the triple lock for a long time, but no politician has the guts to say, yep, that's what's needed. Ross, great call. Thank you very much indeed. Billy is a new caller in Gravesend. Hello, Billy.
Hello. Yes, about me, I'm 21. I graduated last year in a physics degree from Loughborough University. And I've managed after, it took me about 6 months to find a job. I've managed to find a job, so working in the defense industry. And, it's sort of on the question on, are the people, around our age, seeing hope in this country? Well, frankly, we're not, because I'm having to move all the way. So I obviously live down in Kent, in Gravesend, but the only place I've managed to find a job was up in Scotland. So I'm moving about 450 miles away from my family. And I've also made that decision also based on the fact that I will probably never be able to afford a house down here. It's ridiculous, especially where I live. It takes me so long just to build up a deposit. Obviously up in Glasgow, the house prices are half the price. But I'm somebody who's lucky enough to get a job. I've got a lot of friends who've graduated. I've got a friend who went to the University of Bristol, studied maths. They, got so many different awards, got a first-class degree, still hasn't found a job. I've got plenty of people in my physics degree who still haven't found a job. And even when you're trying to find a job, it is frankly ridiculous. You do an insane amount of video interviews, phone interviews, multiple interviews, traveling to interviews, and it was basically working a 9-to-5 job. I'd log in at 9, look at every single job that was getting posted, and then applying to those. And so, I'm surprised that a lot of people have decided to leave this country. I mean, I've also got friends who had been applying for jobs for 4 or 5 months, and graduate jobs. They've all done STEM degrees, and they've just decided, we can't find anything. Let me just go, move to Australia. There's better weather there. Let me go and just work in a supermarket there, and I'll just live a more comfortable life there. I mean, what's the point of me staying in this country? Or Canada, New Zealand. A lot of people have go to Thailand. I think it's just frankly the way things are.
What do you put this down to?
Well, I mean, I put this down to, I'm not really I don't really keep, fully into what's going on in UK politics, but,
The reason I ask that is because listening to you speak, and I have full sympathy, but when I was your age, graduating in the 1980s, graduate unemployment was massive then as well. So I'm not sure this is anything particularly new, apart from the fact that AI.
I'm fully aware of that. I'm fully aware that. I've had that curiosity. Has it always been like this? And I've noticed that. There's been so many different points in the past 30, 40 years where it has been like this. I just think just the environment in the UK, knowing you can't afford a house, one of the biggest things is and something that's talked about on here, you can't tax your way to growth. Small businesses are absolutely crushed. I'm somebody with family in America. I've traveled extensively in America. I spent a lot of time in America. And I mean, for me, just on the quality of life aspect, when I go to America and I go out in the evening, I go to areas and they're filled. They're filled with people out with their friends, with their family, eating. It's something you never see here. Like, people have the disposable income. It's just like, it's not just disposable income, but it's also like there's small businesses, there's good food. I don't really feel like, and like, I look at my town centre on a Friday, Saturday night, it is dead empty. Like, when I come back from America, I see the contrast. It's just, it's crazy, the contrast. I mean, it's mostly other places in Europe as well. Even places like Spain. I've got family in Barcelona as well. And when you go there, everyone's out at 10 o'clock. It's small things like that. And it's something that, I'm actually looking forward to moving to Scotland, because I think, thankfully, property prices, or, because there's obviously, I understand, like, the economic conditions up there, but property prices aren't so insane, so small businesses can survive. But down here in Gravesend, not at all. I think quality of life is one of the big things.
Well, I think quality of life is hugely important. But, for example, you talked about people, or the last caller did, moving to Australia for that. House prices in Sydney are more expensive than London. Now, Sydney's just one city. There are plenty of other places in Australia. I completely get that. But it is, I think sometimes people have been fed a narrative that everything is much better in Australia. The prices are lower. Well, some may be, but many aren't. The cost of housing and the supply of housing is not actually better than it is here. People who go and work in the Australian health service, it's not an equivalent to the NHS. And I think
I'm somebody who totally agrees that the grass isn't greener on the other side. Everywhere really in the West is the exact same. But there is certain things which you do notice that there is like a quality of like life difference. I mean, I understand why people go to Australia. Like, they'd rather work in a supermarket, and I know the rent and the house price are the exact same in Australia, but they get access to beaches and nicer weather, and they can go to the beach after a long day at work.
And you're going to Glasgow?
Right?
I mean, if you're moving from Gravesend to Glasgow, I'm not sure you're going to get better weather in Glasgow.
Well, I get the mountains and the hills, and I mean, I'm not somebody who too much complains. I mean, I'm perfectly fine with that, but it's just, I've seen, if you want to, like, it's sort of why are people a lot of people are choosing to leave the country. How can you go and do a STEM degree and you still can't find a job? Like, it is tough. Yeah. It's tough.
Well, look, I get that, because at the moment you said you'd got a physics degree.
What you said, where people are being fed a certain, like, okay, like the grass is greener on the other side, they're being sold, especially with social media, people are being sold that. I think it's always been tough. And I think in the past, maybe some people would have, stayed here. But obviously, because they're being fed this whole, the grass is green on the other side, that is also part of it, why people do go. Why they're such,
and also, because, I mean, people who get to your age of 21, many will have travelled to different countries throughout their teens, and you sort of get an affinity with a particular country, and you sort of come to believe that it is so much better than home. And I think that's a natural thing in many ways. But as you said yourself, sort of the grass is not always greener. Thank you very much indeed, Billy. Good luck in Glasgow. Right, let me tell you who's on Cross Question tonight. Layla Cunningham, Reform UK candidate for the 2028 London mayoral election. Political journalist Michael Crick. Dr. Joe Grady, General Secretary of the University and College Union. And Gito Harry, former Downing Street Director of Communications under Boris Johnson. It's 7:47 on LBC.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Chancellor Rachel Reeves was filming a promotional video and she was heckled. She said it's not very British manners. But is she right? Chief Secretary of the Treasury, Lucy Rigby.
As Brits, we do a bit of heckling, don't we? Rachel gives as good as she gets.
Etiquette expert and social behaviour expert to Liz Brewer.
Even though I may totally disagree with what's being spoken, you have to allow her to make her point.
Let's get straight to your reaction.
If I'd have been there, I'd have heckled her and shouted, "Can I borrow your fuel card?" I think Rachel Reeves did great to keep her composure.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Experience. It's knowing the difference between a good deal and, well, a great deal. Saga Travel Insurance covers most pre-existing medical conditions and has been named a Which Best Buy. Smart choice. And right now, you can get 20% off travel insurance until the 11th of June. Search Saga Travel Insurance for a quote today. New policies only, subject to medical screening. Standard and Plus are Which Best Buys May 2025. Terms and conditions apply. Over 50s only.
From the producers of Yellowstone,
welcome to Texas, honey.
Beth and Rip are back.
A legacy is a beautiful thing,
A new original series.
but only if it survives.
Family is the only thing worth fighting for.
This life here is gonna work, isn't it?
We'll make it work.
I can make this a lot harder for all y'all.
And peace will have to wait.
Dutton Ranch. Stream now only on Paramount Plus. T's and C's apply. Subscription required. 18+.
There's one green bottle sat on my fridge shelf. This green and white bottle that supports my gut health. Beautiful by nature, beautiful by name. It's the tastiest way to up my gut health game.
Biotiful Gut Health. Switch your yogurt to the UK's #1 kefir and give your gut and your summer a lift. Kefir is a source of calcium which contributes to the normal function of digestive enzymes. For verification of UK's #1 kefir, see biotifulguthealth.com/radio.
With over 50 years' experience, at Fidelity, we know the difference between investing and being invested. Investing is a transaction. Being invested is about the future you want to build. With our guidance, expert insights, and wealth of investment options, you can feel confident about your long-term goals. For ISAs, pensions, or advice, be invested with Fidelity. Go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
750, someone says, good old Iain, making a negative out of good immigration numbers. Love you, really. Don't want to live in my own echo chamber. I don't think I've made a negative out of a drop in immigration figures. I think everyone, almost, unless you are an extremist who thinks that we should have completely open borders, I think everyone thought that 944,000 people coming in 2023 was, shall we say, a tad excessive. So I think it is a good thing that they've come down. But I'm not going to pretend that I'm not concerned that too many young people are seemingly wanting to leave this country. I don't think that can be good for any country if that happens. Let's go to Max in Dubai. Hello, Max.
Hi, Ian.
Hello.
Firstly,
I'd
say you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, you're in the prime of your life, Ian, and don't let anybody ever tell you otherwise.
Doesn't feel like that all the time, but thank you, Max. Right, what would you like to say?
So I moved to Dubai when I was 38, and my wife was 33. And now, about 7 years later, we've got two kids, 7 and 4. I don't think that we would be looking to move back while the kids are young. And if we did, we would probably go to Poland, where my wife is from, and choose that over the UK, as many Poles even in the UK are doing.
That's an interesting one, because I took part in a documentary about 9 months ago from a British filmmaker who had spent the last 15 years living in Poland, and he and his friend, they were both contemplating, should they come back to Britain? And it was a very interesting documentary, but it's interesting that you would choose Poland over Britain. I mean, is that because your wife is pressuring you to?
Not at all. Not at all. To be honest, I mean, we met in the UK. We met in Wales before we moved back to England and then to Dubai. I think the Polish thing is we go back to Poland every summer because of the kids, to keep their Polish language, with her extended family, and to give them time around them. And if I'm honest with you, it doesn't feel as full as the UK. The roads aren't ram-packed. The city centres aren't ram-packed. There's very little crime. The EU has put billions over the past 20 years into that place. So the infrastructure is amazing. The education system is just as good as the UK's now. Health service is very good. There's lots of jobs. It's becoming quite a tech hub and the logistics hub in the east of Europe. And the unsaid thing as well that a lot of people do say is it actually feels Polish. It actually feels Polish in a funny kind of way, a bit more like the England that I grew up in the 1990s, 80s and 90s.
You mean the England where you managed to meet your Polish wife?
The Wales, yeah.
But you see the slight hypocrisy in that argument.
Yeah, the irony and hypocrisy. I do. Yeah, my wife being a Polish immigrant to the UK as well. I mean, it's not lost on me, and me maybe being a English immigrant in Poland one day. But I think it's quite telling, and I know quite a few Poles in the UK who are looking at moving back to Poland now. They've got young families. mostly for safety, mostly for affordability. Affordability is a big one, just living expenses and housing. Childcare as well is much, much cheaper. And those are all reasons why we would stay in Dubai as well. I'm in quite a privileged position, but generally childcare, and because of the tax-free nature, childcare, living expenses, even getting on the property market, it's actually easier out here.
Well, it certainly is now, I would have thought.
Yeah, house prices have taken a little bit of a hit, but it's.
I mean, just on that, what proportion of your British friends who live in Dubai have come back after all the stuff with Iran?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a small circle of British friends, a big circle of multinational, international friends, many Indians, many Europeans, some South Americans. And during the crisis itself, most employers let people go back to their home countries, and most of them now have returned. It's only those who were here for less than 6 months who tended to then, financial pressures, relocate back to their home countries. Those who have been here for 6 months and over tended to come back and stay. And I see that in the school. Well, Max,
we could talk for a long time, but I've got 5 minutes left in this hour, and I want to fit at least one more caller on. Pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much. Let's go to Richard in Stafford. Hi, Richard.
Hello, Ian. Thanks for having me on.
A pleasure. What would you like to say?
I'd like to give my youngest son as an example of what you're talking about. He graduated with a first-class honours in mechanical engineering from a good university.
Well, he must be in demand.
He is, but not in this country. He was unable to build a satisfying career for himself in the UK. He then decided, out of frustration, to take a retrospective gap year and go backpacking. Partway through that year, in Australia, he enjoyed it so much he got himself a job in engineering and is currently employed as the head of engineering in an engineering company in Australia. He's got a house, he's got a car, he's building a life for himself, and he's not alone. He's got a social circle, including a number of British professionals who are doing exactly the same thing, including 3 doctors. Now, I think part of the reason is this generation seem to be more fearless about taking on the world. It's a much smaller place. I think I'm the same age as you. When I graduated, the internet didn't exist, mobile phones didn't exist. It didn't even cross my mind to work abroad.
I can remember the first time I saw a fax machine and thought it was the height of high technology.
Yeah. We counted on abacus and slide rules and things like that.
Texas Instruments calculators.
Anyway, yes, I think they see the world as a much smaller place and they're more willing to take risks. And if they're not having a satisfying time here, they will go out and find it. There was a young lady who called from California, was it, earlier on?
Yeah.
And she's found a satisfying career for herself out there, and good luck to them. If they've got the confidence and bottle to do it, why not?
Thank you very much, Richard. Let's finish off with Ted in Orlando, Florida. Ted, we haven't got a lot of time. What would you like to say?
I'll just do a quick comparison from England to America, Florida. My sister's got 2 kids, 29 and 30, both with college degrees. Both still live at home. Neither one of them can get a job paying much more than $35,000 a year. On the other side of the coin, here in America, my daughter's 30, her husband's 29. He does not have a college degree. She does. But both jobs they have don't require a degree. The difference is here, he's making $85,000, she's making $65,000. So they've got about $130,000, $135,000 a year income, and yet they get taxed less. They've already bought their first home here in Florida, in sunny Florida, for only $250,000, and they have $9,000 a month spending money. $9,000. Their mortgage is $2,000. That's the difference between being 30 in England and being 30 in America. You have more disposable cash. The cost of living is cheaper on most things, other than odd things like fruit, but most things is cheaper. Gasoline, electricity is 4 times cheaper, and so on and so forth. That place they bought for $250,000 American dollars is twice the size of my mum and dad's home, which is $495,000 in Chelmsford, Essex. So that's a comparison. That's why people
Cardboard
leave.
walls, though.
Oh, no. Listen, they've got this massive swimming pool, palm trees.
Oh, stop it, Ted, because you're making me want to move.
Right, I'm telling you, it's night and day. They went over to the UK with us last year and visited all over the place, and they were shell-shocked by just how dowdy it is, how no one seems to have any money, wants to do anything. It just is really dire. They didn't want to go back. They went, once and they're done.
Ted,
anyway, that's it.
Ted, thank you very much. This is Iain Dale reporting live for KZWR in Orlando, Florida. It could happen, you know, couldn't it? No, it couldn't. Right, coming up in Cross Question over the next hour, we have Layla Cunningham, Reform UK candidate for the 2028 London mayoral election, Michael Crick, political journalist and broadcaster, Dr. Joe Grady, General Secretary of the University and College Union, and Gito Harry, former Downing Street Director of Communications, former BBC political reporter. That's all coming up. You can send us a question on 0345 6060 973. You can call or WhatsApp. You can text 84850. And of course, if you're not already doing so, you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app, or the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the tourism industry has welcomed plans by the Chancellor to ease the cost of living for families this summer. Rachel Reeves made the announcement in the Commons earlier.
What matters for families is not just getting by, but being able to enjoy time together without worrying about the next bill. That is why I am launching the Great British Summer Savings Scheme to help families and support our hospitality sector.
Cheaper theme park tickets are among the cost of living measures announced by the Chancellor. The Conservatives say it's too little, too late. Newly released documents reveal the late Queen was very keen for Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor to take on a prominent role representing the UK. A government memo shows she was involved in the former prince being made a trade envoy in 2001. An NHS trust has sacked 11 members of staff for improperly accessing medical records belonging to the victims of the Nottingham stabbings. 2 students and a school caretaker were stabbed to death in 2023. And after last year's Supreme Court ruling on gender, the government's published its long-awaited guidance on single-sex spaces. It says trans women should not be allowed to use women-only services, and trans men must be excluded from men-only services. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 11 points at 10,443. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather, rain lingering in the north tonight, mostly clear elsewhere, a low of 9 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
Taking antibiotics when you don't need them puts you and your family at risk of a longer and more severe illness. Always take your doctor's advice. Search NHS antibiotics.
You saw me, walking along the beach. You watched me turn round the headland, and the tide, it cut me off. The rocks were wet, too wet to climb, so I panicked. But you didn't. You dialed 999 and asked for the Coast Guard.
Coast Guard.
And I just want to say, whoever you are, thank you.
In an emergency at the coast, call 999 and ask for the Coast Guard.
I'm a real snack monster. But Mum and Dad says all that munching isn't good for me. Around half the sugar we eat comes from unhealthy snacks and sugary drinks. If you want to change from a snack monster to a snack star, search Change for Life for loads of healthy snacking ideas.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello and welcome to Thursday's Cross Question with me, Iain Dale. On the panel with me tonight, to my left, Dr. Jo Grady, General Secretary of the University and College Union. Next to her, Guido Harry, former Downing Street Director of Communications and BBC politics journalist. To my right, Michael Crick, former BBC political journalist and Channel 4 News and goodness knows where else. And Layla Cunningham, she's not a former anything, she's current Reform, well she is, but Reform UK candidate for the 2026 London mayoral election. They are all veterans of this programme. It's going to be a great panel. So if you'd like to ask them a question, 0345 6060 973 is the number you need to dial or send a WhatsApp message to. You can text 84850 and of course watch us on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Right, let's take a text question from Nicola in Sutton Coldfield. Has the clampdown on immigration now gone too far? Or net migration to the UK fell by 48% last year to 171,000. And aside from during the COVID pandemic, this is the lowest the figure has been since 2012. Jo Grady.
I think that's a great question. I think in the UK are long overdue, a kind of a serious conversation about migration.
Haven't we been talking about it for the last 10 years?
No, because I don't think we've been having serious conversations. I think we've been having conversations that are dominated by scapegoating and quite dehumanising language a lot of the time. I don't think we've been talking about the contribution that migrants make, about what we need as a society. I think what we've seen a lot is discussions that are about diverting attention away from what it is we need. We've had successive governments in this country that have caused housing crisis, crisis in our NHS. We've seen wages tumble because we've had deregulation of the labour market.
But a lot of people would put that down to high immigration, wouldn't they?
Yeah, and I think that's the exact point I'm making is I think that's a really distracting conversation. We do nothing but focus on those issues, whereas migrants haven't systematically underfunded the basis of our nation. So I think the statistics that we've seen today demonstrate that this kind of hostile environment, the mechanisms that have been brought in by successive governments and the current one, is leading to a decrease in skilled and trained workers. And the university sector is a really good example of that. The NHS, I sit alongside other general secretaries that represent other trade unions talking about a real lack of skilled workers now applying to come to work here.
But would you say that the figure 2 years ago of 944,000 as opposed to today 171,000, that was clearly unsustainable?
I think what is unsustainable is that we are not funding the sectors of the economy that we need, that we as a society, as a political choice for decades now have systematically underfunded the very services that we need as a society. That is a completely separate discussion to us focusing on these figures without ever connecting it back to what it is we want and how we're going to get there.
Layla Cunningham.
Yeah, look, I'm the daughter of immigrants. They came in the 60s. So I come to the argument of immigration with a sense of gratitude, but also a sense of realism. We're not going to lie that since the 90s, mass migration has caused the suppression of wages, the suppression of skills investment, and it has caused huge pressures on public services. And that's got to change. We have had mass migration at such a pace that there has been integration issues, there's been housing issues, there is a downstream from mass migration that we're seeing now. So I do welcome the numbers, but did I read right that 250,000 of our skilled people are leaving as well? So there's also that question. Why are we losing entrepreneurs? Why are we losing young workers in this country? I have the great pleasure of speaking to university students who, as you can imagine, adore me.
As we all do.
Yeah, exactly. And adore, and I love to ask them, when you graduate, do you want to stay here? And no, going to London, the centre of finance or the economy, is not the dream anymore. And that is because wages have been stagnant since 2008 because we have
migrants.
we have imported low wage migration, and that has been used to, it's great for the businesses, it's not great for the taxpayer because a lot of those low wage migrants cannot sustain themselves, so it's the British taxpayer that falls on sustaining them. You say we're not funding public services.
They're not taking the city jobs that pay well. That's we've seen across the board, wages have stagnated and declined for pretty much every occupational group. We've seen a systematic deregulation of the labour market. We've seen sham
What do you mean by
subsidies.
deregulation?
What
regulation do you want?
I mean, I would love regulation where people aren't outsourced, where people don't get their pensions taken away from them, where people aren't fired and rehired.
Public sector pensions are not taken away. They keep growing and costing us a massive effect.
If we look at the University of Solent at the minute, current legislation is allowing the university to pretty much force all of its workforce into a sham subsidiary company with the expressed intent of taking their pension away from them. This is happening in an incredible amount of workplaces all over the country.
We're slightly going off this subject here. Michael?
It seems to me that there's an acceptable level financially and economically, and there's an acceptable level in terms of what
but everybody
you get away with
disagrees about what that level is.
And there's another level of the politics of all this. Now, that figure, the new figure, what was it,
171,000.
171,000 is probably the right balance between the two. But there are sectors of our economy where clearly we desperately need more people for all sorts of reasons, lack of skills. In some cases, it's because existing workers are so badly paid, such as the social care industry, that there aren't enough people who want to do it, and people have to recruit from overseas in order to look after our elderly relatives at the end of their
Michael,
lives.
if you keep recruiting low-skilled wages that will accept low-skilled wages,
I'm not saying
the
this is a
wages
good
will
thing.
remain stagnant. That is my point.
I agree, but on the other hand,
we have to force.
If your mother was in a social care home and it was understaffed, you'd be happy to have it.
But looking at a broader picture, we cannot keep relying because we are doing a disservice to our people here who, like you say, perhaps it's more beneficial for them to live on welfare than to go into the workforce.
I agree. And I think there is a difference between the situation right now and the long term. But in the long term, we've got another consideration, and that is that we are not reproducing. The reproduction rate is now about 1.5.
To pay for your pension and mine.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's correlated to home ownership. So there is a huge correlation between young people, because wages are stagnant, do not have enough disposable income to have security of home ownership, and they delay having children, and they don't having children. And that is a serious issue. But in
the long term, unless we all start having more children, then we are going to need more immigration.
You've got quite a few, haven't you?
We're going to need more immigrants to pay for us and everybody else when we're in our 70s, 80s and 90s.
I would rather have less people on welfare, more people working. You talk about the political aspect and what the acceptable number is. Yeah, people do talk about immigration in terms of increasing GDP, and we need it, but people don't experience immigration like that. People on the ground experience immigration through not getting a GP appointment, through housing issues, through, social cohesion, all these things. You might have the economic argument for it, but on the ground, that's what puts people off.
I know, and it drives up house prices, it drives up rents. It is an incredibly difficult problem.
Okay, Gita, Harry.
Well, I've always been unfashionably pro-migration within limits, because when you talk about GP appointments, chances are the GP is an immigrant. Chances are the care worker is an immigrant. Chances are that the, top-level banker and the, top-level corporate lawyer is an immigrant, or there's an awful lot among them. So if it wasn't for migrants, economic growth would have taken a massive hit and public services would have collapsed. That's the truth, and that's something that's not often said as strongly as it should. That said, though, the impact on certain communities of literally drowning them in people who arrive in such large numbers that they change the whole ethos and the feel and the culture and often the language and the religion of the village. I have sympathy for people who feel overwhelmed by that. I think it does come back to the problem that, sadly, and I can't think of an inoffensive way of saying this, that we have produced generations of people in this country who are either not equipped or not inclined to go out and work. And that's why, again, I admire somebody who can pick up their pack the other side of the world, come here, learn a new language, learn a new set of traditions, find a new job, find new skills, and contribute more than people who sit here, 2.8 million at the moment, claiming benefits that a lot of those migrants are contributing taxes towards. And so for me, you've got to look at the whole thing. If it wasn't, if our own homegrown people were less work shy, or more of them, we wouldn't need as many migrants, and there wouldn't be the opportunities that would draw them here.
But maybe if you question why they're work shy, are we rewarding work? Is someone who's working, are they getting on? Is there a dream at the end of that?
Well, it's all relative, isn't it? If you can earn more, if you can get 28,000 roughly without working, then the welfare
it's a problem.
Traps people in
100%.
it. So, the answer for me is not to keep whacking up wages until employers go out of business because they can't afford to pay them, at which point nobody has a job, but to actually make the life of being unemployed, unless you are severely handicapped or there's a good reason for it, less attractive than it currently is.
But Gwita, you cannot raise wages. It's not up to the government to raise wages.
No.
Raising wages comes from growth.
That's exactly what I say.
Right?
So the government should cut welfare, because government can cut welfare.
Well, yeah, but there are parts of welfare
not upgraded year after year after year until the benefits bill with pensions is and the interest payments is literally sinking.
Okay. But there are parts of the welfare bill where people, which welfare is for people who are in work. Parts of universal credit are to supplement the low wages that people are paid.
But that's a failure of the system.
Yeah, it's a system.
It is a failure. It's the failure of the market system of capitalism that that people cannot be paid a decent amount to make them go to work, and they have to have the universal credit on top.
You say it's a failure of capitalism, though. You could also argue.
I'm not saying that any other system
probably
do
would
it better.
argue this, and I would agree with it. That given that huge wave of immigration from Eastern Europe in the 2000s, where we had, I think, 1.4 million people coming from Romania, Poland, Bulgaria, etc., where they. And I'm not blaming them as individuals, but they effectively undermined the wages in this country because they were willing to work for far less than the British people were willing to work for. So it completely distorted the economy, and it was within the power of politicians to do something about that, and they didn't.
I mean, when Blair inherited about 50,000 net migration, by the time he left, it was about 250,000. They failed to put transitional controls in 2004, which led to a flood of people from Eastern Europe who suppressed wages. And you know what? They were meant to represent the working class. What they did, that policy undercut the working class. And the very people they were meant to... And hang on, that precipitated Brexit. Yeah. That precipitated... And then the Labour Party had the audacity to campaign for Remain and call those that are voting for Brexit as bigots and got it wrong.
Well, there's a lot in what you say. And indeed, the Labour government of Blair and Brown deliberately encouraged migration into this country to boost growth. And about 2/3 of the growth that did occur under Blair and Brown, and it was decent rates of growth in those days, was as a result of migration. And it's only emerged later just how much it had been a deliberate policy, one never discussed at the time.
The other thing Tony Blair did and Gordon Brown was actually encourage half the population to go to university, including a lot of people who would have been far better off learning a skill that would have made them more money and left them with less debt and more to contribute to society than going to do a lower-end degree in a lower-end university. So we ended up without the skills. And therefore, these people came in, not because they were cheap and undermining, but because Polish people are highly skilled. People came here from countries like Poland knowing how to do stuff that a lot of Brits have
and they got a really good reputation for that.
And do it well.
Yeah, Joe.
I think there's a whole raft of really complex overlooking issues here. I think there is a lived reality and the long legacy of Thatcherism. We did see the selling off of lots of social housing. We saw the beginning of lots of deregulating of the labour market. We saw the beginning of wrecking a lot of the powers that trade unions had, which did help regulate wages and what have you.
35 years ago, she left office.
But we were just talking about New Labour and the 90s and the 10s. And I think the point I'm making is we are here because of a lot of overlapping reasons. But the way that we're going to get out of this, I don't think is through the politics of finger pointing is through dehumanizing people who are trying to improve their lives, or by attacking, people that are currently on benefits and asking. We need to ask, why some of our cities have sinker states where people have no hope and no future. We need to ask why we're saying that we need to transform the economy, but we're not investing in further education, adult education and higher education. And all of the successive governments, including the current one, have done that. Instead, we just seem to be having this circular discussion, which is migration bad and we have to do something. Okay, if that's what you think.
Nobody here has said that. Layla hasn't said that migration is bad. She's been a beneficiary of it.
Well, yeah, I'm sure there's lots of migrant stories around this table, but the tenor of the public conversation is this is bad and must be stopped. And I think there's a lot of danger in that politics of finger pointing.
The one thing we haven't talked about is the cross-channel migration, which is a highly visible aspect of it, but in terms of the numbers, is a minority. Well, it's less of a minority now than it was in the years of 900,000, and it's now and it's also starting to come down. But because it's so visible, it has a huge political impact, and of course, it's mostly almost entirely men, young men. It's a certain type of migrants, and it has inflamed, I think, the political discourse in this country to a horrifying degree. And neither government nor other potential governments have yet come up with a way of dealing with it.
OK, we'll move on to another subject. Really good discussion in our first opening section. Thank you all very much indeed. It's 19 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
From the producers of Yellowstone,
welcome to Taxation.
Beth and Rip are back.
A legacy is a beautiful thing.
A new original series.
But only if it survives.
Family is the only thing worth fighting for.
This life here is gonna work, isn't it?
We'll make it work.
I can make this a lot harder for all y'all. Then peace will have to wait.
Dutton Ranch. Stream now only on Paramount Plus. T's and C's apply. Subscription required. 18+.
If you're looking for a new phone that ticks all the boxes, the Samsung Galaxy A57 and A37 5G have something for everyone. Long-lasting battery life, a triple rear camera, and the power of AI assistance. For a limited time, if you buy a Samsung Galaxy A57 or A37 5G at Vodafone, you can claim a pair of Galaxy Buds 3 FE worth £129, so you can tune out background noise and tune in to the sound you love. But hurry, offer ends 26th of May. Claim Buds 3 FE from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
The Hillary's mid-season sale is on, with up to 40% off hundreds of made-to-measure styles. Plus, for a limited time only, there's a huge extra 15% off everything. That's 15% off every blind, every curtain, every shutter, and our stylish garden pergolas too. Don't forget, with Hillary's, measuring and fitting is always included. So get window-wise and book your free in-home appointment today at hillary.co.uk. But hurry, the extra 15% off ends the 1st of June. Conditions apply.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
20 past 8 on LBC. Reform UK's Layla Cunningham is here. Michael Crick, political journalist. Dr. Joe Grady, General Secretary of the University and College Union. And Gita Harry, former Downing Street Director of Communications. Right, Jane has sent in a text. Is what Rachel Reeves is offering for hospitality comparable to Sunak's Eat Out to Help Out? Who will benefit most? Well, the Chancellor has announced a reduction in the VAT charged on family outings, such as to theme parks, zoos and museums, and also to places like cinemas, soft play and theatres during July and August, along with to children's meals in restaurants and cafes from 20% to 5%. Under 16s in England will also get free bus travel in August. Does that go far enough? Michael Crick.
I think it's all a bit silly, really. It's just tinsel. It's just window dressing. And if you're going to give handouts, do it in something that is very simple, doesn't involve lots of bureaucracy and people having to fill in forms and the HMRC having to do this, that and the other. And you just do a simple tax cut or a simple boost to the economy in terms of some great big lump of public spending, but not bringing down. I mean, VAT is complicated enough as it is. I registered for it. You probably are. And to actually have to make this even more complicated for these businesses is not the way to go. There are much simpler ways.
I don't know how much this is going to cost. It doesn't seem to be a particular generous cut in. I mean, I don't know. Although I suppose if you go to Alton Towers and it costs your family £100 to get in, and then sort of another £100 on the rides, I suppose that will make a difference.
And they're not even guaranteed to pass it on, are they? But sorry.
What I hate about this stuff, and even the way you frame the question, is it generous enough? We are broken. This is not money that is sitting there, somebody wondering what on earth to do with it. This is all going on the national credit card to be handed as a bill with interest, accumulating day by day to our children and their children. It's horrendous. And to sit here thinking, how can I actually make the cost of going to Alton Towers cheaper for a family who's going to Alton Towers? It may save them a tenner, which is not significant, but it's costing the UK
I'm going to put
tenner times all those people. So the sums for the government are enormous, and the sums for people are tiny.
I'm going to put my Rachel Reeves hat on.
Precious taxpayer money.
I'm going to put my Rachel Reeves hat on, and I think if she was sitting here now, she would say, understand what you mean, Gitto, but if it encourages, say, an extra 20% of families to go to these theme parks, that puts more money back into the economy. That means that more tax is paid by the companies, and that will pay for itself.
Does she think that Alton Towers, who employ people who are commercially qualified, haven't thought of this themselves? How do they get more people to turn up? Do you think people in the Treasury, educated in the classics and, sitting there sort of producing reports for decades on end, are better qualified to work out how to harness the market, how to encourage, how to boost demand when demand is a little bit low, how to make the most of a sunny or minimise the danger of a rainy day? We don't need Rachel Reeves tinkering with what goes on. If she just made life simpler and got out of the way and hadn't actually imposed national insurance on employers, including Alton Towers and everywhere else she's now trying to help, she'd have done them a massive favour. And now she's just messing, and it's all spending big money to sort of get good headlines.
Leila.
Well, I mean, yes, of course, seasonal tax cuts are welcome. They obviously recognise that there's a cost of living crisis. But how about just letting people keep a bit more of what they make? I think the problem is that we have successive governments that treat growth like a government slogan. That we're going to increase the minimum wage, but if you can't increase minimum wage, I think, without growth, because what happens is companies either stop hiring, reduce hours, or increase prices, and I think they have to recognise that growth has to come from the people, not from the government. And again, it's tinkering around the edges, but there's no long-term growth strategy. They just say we want growth and do everything to stop growth. Regulation, taxation. I speak to small businesses who are more focused on complying than they are on growth. We've literally regulated growth out of the economy. They're like, it's just too much. We're number 20 for IPOs in the world. This is the City of London. We used to be the top. They don't ask these fundamental questions. They just tinker around the edges.
So you're standing for Reform as London mayoral candidate in 2028. That's only just less than 2 years away now. What can you do as Mayor of London to make this better? Because in the end, it is about decisions that national government is making.
Yeah, I mean, at a local level, I speak to the ULEZ charge. It's a tax. If you need to drive into London to work, you will pay the ULEZ charge. It doesn't stop you from driving in. It's just an extra tax you have to pay if you live in a place that you have to pay it. So I would like to abolish that. I feel in London, motorists are treated like a cash cow. They're punished, the blanket 20-mile-per-hour zones. I had the pleasure of prosecuting traffic trials, and it's the only place where you see grown men crying because, lo and behold, they've done the horrific crime of doing 23 miles per hour 4 times and their license has been removed. It is nonsensical. And listen, good policy always protects people. Bad policy punishes people. And that's what you have with the 20 miles per hour, because it's not really catching reckless drivers. It's literally just catching drivers. And so it's little things like that, like Gita says, just let me get on with my life. Let me keep a little bit more of what I earn, keep the road safe. Of course, by in residential areas and by schools, there should be blanket zones, but not on the Bayswater Road, not on major highways. And so that's one thing I want to do. And as you know, we don't build enough. I speak to so many home builders who have left the market. We just don't have, we have massive pressure on housing and we don't have enough supply.
Okay, Jo?
I think this is a really good example of Rachel Reeves' team sitting around thinking, how can we win back the public a little bit?
Yeah.
And
no crime in there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the question, this is clearly not comparable to Sunak's Eat Out to Help Out, which, probably spread COVID. So I think, the comparison isn't quite fair. But I do agree with what has been said that, it's tinsel. I think if I was a parent and I was, struggling with all of my bills and everything that we've already said, this wouldn't be the helping hand I'd be looking for. I get that it's nice. I get that it's probably going to put some money into the economy, and I get that it's probably going to allow some people some days out over the summer. So I don't think it's a bad thing, but it's not the lifeline that working people, I think, are looking to the government for.
And of course, there'll be a lot of people who are going to these theme parks who think, oh, God, there'll be so many people there now. It's not, maybe we won't go after all.
But what about people who don't have kids? Do they get a tax break? We've got 30 and 40-year-olds, as we said, in London, who are delaying having children because they can't afford a home, and they don't even get a look in by politicians. And what about an offer for them?
Maybe that same amount of money should be spent on encouraging those kind of people to have kids.
Well, the only thing that will encourage them is security. Keeping more and having a dream of owning a home.
Governments the world over have tried to encourage people to have kids, and nobody's come up with a policy that works.
I tell you what would encourage a lot of women to have children, though. Closing the gender pay gap, better maternity protections, better employment regulation. I know I sound like a broken record, but if you speak to a lot of young women, sure, there are non-labour market related issues, but a lot of it is to do with the workplace. And we should be increasing the amount of parental leave that can be shared and, dads and the way they're looked after. So, yes, there are these structural issues, but there are other real labour market issues about why women are delaying on not having children at all. Speaks the trade unionist.
Do you accept that?
I think on maternity rights, the problem, and the problem is that if you really increase maternity rights, I don't know enough about them, but I know that I worked for CPS and I had great maternity leave. It's a huge cost to small businesses, and then it has the unintended consequence of being, I don't want to hire a woman of childbearing age because she's going to have children and I'm not going to hire her. And trust me, I've heard people say that. So
I know that's a reality.
So then how do you deal with that? There is the unintended consequences of what you would say, good policy, and then it would keep more women out of the workforce. If a small business is forced to pay them or keep their role for them, they already can't make ends meet.
Sarah says, Emily Thornberry is wonderful. Why isn't she our female Prime Minister? I'm not sure whether that Sarah thinks, Layla, that you are Emily Thornberry.
Oh, wow. Now, that's one I haven't had before.
Well, there you go.
Actually, hearing your voice, yeah, I could see how you might make that mistake on the radio.
Now that lady might change her mind when she knows what party I'm with, because if she supports Emily Thornberry, she might not support
Well, I think, Corey, we need Emily Thornberry on the cross question very, very soon. Right, more questions to come. 0345 6060 973. It's 8:30. Darryl Jackson has the news headlines.
Theme parks and cinemas have welcomed a cut to VAT on ticket prices during the summer holidays. The Chancellor's made the announcement as part of a series of measures to help ease the cost of living. It's emerged the late Queen was very keen for Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor to have a prominent role promoting Britain. The government's released a number of documents about his appointment as US trade envoy in 2001. And 5 people have been arrested on suspicion of fraud linked to the local elections in Greater Manchester. Police say they're investigating the process of how candidates were put forward in a Tameside ward. LBC weather, rain lingering in the north tonight, mostly clear elsewhere, a low of 9 degrees.
This is LBC.
You've packed enough suitcases to know quality when you see it. Well, Saga Travel Insurance has been named a Which Best Buy. And now get 20% off when you buy before the 11th of June. Search Saga Travel Insurance for a quote today. New policies only, Standard and Plus are Which Best Buys May 2025. Terms and conditions apply. Over 50s only.
Now, focus on your car. That's right. The one you're ready to sell. See it clearly in your mind, waiting to be sold. We can make it disappear. Just watch carefully. Your car sold, collected and paid for in almost no time at all. It's not magic, it's motorway. Sell your car today at motorway.co.uk.
Switching to Vodafone full fibre broadband is now as easy as pie. Ooh, freshly baked. It's a walk in the park. Hello, little fella. It's like taking candy from a baby. Come on, as if I'd do that. With One Touch Switch, it's easy. We sort everything out for you. We even contact your current provider. Plus, we'll help towards leaving fees. Switch today to full fibre broadband with Vodafone.
Up to £200 credit to cover leaving fees. More information and terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
8:32. Reform UK's Layla Cunningham is here. Political journalist Michael Crick, Gito Harry, former Downing Street Director of Communications, and Dr. Joe Grady, General Secretary of the University and College Union. Paul in Bolton is on the line. Paul, what would you like to ask?
Hello, Ian and panel. I wanted to see what the panel think about Bridget Phillipson's new guidance on single-sex bases, and also to see if they agree with me that this is going to be particularly problematic when it comes to female-to-male trans people who will now have to go back to female toilets, who will now be competing in sports with testosterone in the body against biological women, and also women who look like men as well. And also I wanted to say quickly, personally, this actually makes me feel really disappointed as someone who's a gay man, and I also feel that now maybe we should have a law that bans non-LGBT plus people from our bars, clubs and prides.
Well, there's quite a lot to unpack there. Now, new guidance produced by the Equalities and Human Rights Commission says single-sex spaces such as toilets and changing rooms must be used on the basis of biological sex. Is this thing ever going to go away, I ask myself, because I'm not sure that this is going to be the conclusion of the issue. Gito.
Common sense prevailed at the Supreme Court many, many months ago, and it's taken the government forever just to act on something that was really quite straightforward, the restoration of just reality, that there is a biological reality to being male or female. And it's been an insult and an assault on half the population, known as females, that a man only needs to identify as them, and suddenly he can be in their intimate space, whether that's as a gynecologist or competing against them at sport or in prison. It was a shocker. Now, I don't think we have to be rude toward trans people. I want everybody, as much as possible, to be able to live, left alone by the state and by their fellow man and woman. But to actually, the aggression with which we were forced to deny biological reality and actually the accurate use of language was off the charts, a matter of madness. And shame on the government to take quite so long, and shame just with a little tail in this, where they've actually said as much as possible, you should still provide that third toilet. Again, we've talked about unintentional consequences, the burdens on businesses. Imagine being a small cafe and you just about squeeze out space for a male and a female, toilet, and you are now obliged by Bridget Phillipson to try and squeeze out a third space because there's a tiny minority of the population who can't go to one or the other.
Well, what do you do about female to male transgender men who now will have to get changed in a female changing room? I mean, that because to the women in the changing room, they're going to see that person as a man.
I'm tempted to share a story about Madame Jojo's from my youth.
Oh, go on.
Well, no, I just remember standing, at a urinal where a very tall person in, sort of fishnet tights and the works came next to me and, in a very deep voice said hi and proceeded to use the urinal. It was a little bit of a culture shock for a boy who'd just come up here from, a state school in South Wales. But it's not something that made me retreat under the duvet and get traumatized over it. So there's a way of dealing with these things. If we focus on the humanity of these situations, not this idea of rights and status and winning battles and going to war.
But with respect, what you've just said is pretty belittling to the very important question that Iain just asked. And let's take this in its context. In 2025, there was a survey by a trans group that essentially surveyed local authorities covering 16.5 million people. They were able to find 2 incidences of complaints about anybody across those 16.5 population.
But it was run by
Let me finish. Let me finish. No, data was from the local authorities. They were just collecting data. So this isn't a problem. This isn't a problem that most people ever experience. So we've had this new guidance today. And what does this mean? Let's just pick university and colleges as an example, because you were talking about small businesses. They are now going to be compelled to deal with legislation that often the customers and the communities of these institutions don't want. You know, we have universities where the population of staff and students have been surveyed. They want single-sex spaces to remain, and they want people to be able to use them. You earlier were talking about, you know, men getting in women's spaces. Well, they don't have to transition or claim to be a woman to do that. Men do that all the time with women. 1 in 4 women will suffer sexual harassment in their lives. So I think this is a really, really distracting conversation. We use single-sex spaces all the time for trans people. We have shared spaces. If you use an airport toilet, any sort of toilet on public transport, most of the time, these are shared spaces. There is no data suggesting that trans women or trans men are hanging out in toilets waiting to attack people. Sport, I think, is a different conversation. Bracket that off. But this guidance is going to be impractical, it's going to be unworkable, and it is going to encourage people to be targeting and seeking out trans people, policing bodies in a way that I think is entirely inappropriate and totally unhelpful.
Layla.
So I've been in a bar where I've been harassed by a man. Like you say, they get in your space. And I'd run to the women's toilet for refuge.
Okay.
And the horror of thinking that that man can follow me into the women's toilet and I cannot escape
But
him.
this doesn't happen. This.
Because it's a woman's toilet. But if he was allowed in, it would. And actually, with all due respect, I have a huge issue with men using women's toilets. I wouldn't complain to the local authority because I'm like, what the hell are they going to do? I speak to loads of women. I'm the mother of children. Women do not want men in their space.
But this isn't men, this is trans women.
Some of them have not transitioned. They self-recognise as women, as men, sorry.
So can I ask you a question? When have you ever been in a toilet and thought there's a trans woman in this toilet and I feel uncomfortable?
Many times.
Really?
Yes, many times. Yes, I have. And you might not believe it. It's, as you would say, my reality, and it happens all the time. Women fought very, very hard, number one, to be recognised as a woman and for our spaces. For me, this is men banging on their chest and saying, we want access to everything. There is a woman and there is a man. And what I find pretty galling is that we have a government right now that needed a Supreme Court to tell it that a woman's a woman.
You're misunderstanding the ruling.
What did we do before all this trans
we didn't have any problems.
Well, exactly. We didn't have any problems before. 10 years
But the trans people have existed this entire time. And so this is a fixation on trying to define biological sex.
No. You know very well, as much as I do, is that they have made it a battle to fight. Who
is this they?
You don't know how many horrific messages I get. You're cisgender, you're anti-trans. They are a militant group who go after anyone who has the audacity to simply say a biological truth that a woman is a woman.
You can say a biological truth. That doesn't mean we have to have the very restrictive regulations that are being...
What's restrictive about that? What's restrictive about a man goes into his toilet and a woman... It's how
that is what currently happens. What you are seeking to do is prevent people who identify as women or have transitioned...
But they're not
using
women. I could self-identify as a camel.
Your opinion. That's your opinion.
Doesn't this come down to women being uncomfortable that a trans man, or rather a trans woman, who has not undergone transition, is in a female toilet and therefore, to be blunt about it, has a penis?
But we do not... What I'm suggesting in this issue is we do not have any evidence across the UK to suggest that allowing trans men or trans women into the appropriate single-sex space actually endangers people. There is no evidence.
There is evidence, but there's not a lot. These incidents do not happen regularly every day where a woman in a single space area is assaulted by a trans man, but it has happened.
But what? So point me to the data. I would really love to see the data on this, because when I have tried looking for data on either side, you are not able to find...
Not everything is about empirical data.
Well, I'm afraid it is when you're trying to deny people access and rights and rolling back rights that people have fought for.
Not three at once.
Everything, if you are going to deny people's rights, if you're going to change the law to deny people access to spaces, I do think it should be evidence-led. I don't think it should be based on vibes and I felt this and I felt that.
Why not?
It should be... Why not? Where does that end?
Why can't a woman say, I do not want a man in my space? You talk about...
But this isn't a man, and if you're being called transphobic, you should reflect on the language that you're using.
If you're a penis, you talk about removing people's rights, correct? You see it as removing trans rights.
Well, I don't just see it, it is.
What about the right of a woman to not want to have a man with a penis in a private space with her? Does that
She's
right
not
count?
in the toilet cubicle with you.
Does the changing room, communal changing room, does that right matter to you? Why does the trans right matter more than a woman's rights?
First of all, I would say that person is a woman. And second of all, I am saying we should not be prioritising...
So a woman can have a penis?
We should not be prioritising people who want to completely,
We should not be prioritising women.
That's not what I'm saying.
Well,
you are trying to get me to say something that I am not saying because it serves your agenda. What I am saying is that the bringing in of this regulation today is impractical, it's unenforceable, and it is going to intensify anti-trans sentiments in the UK.
Does a woman have a penis?
This is such a ridiculous conversation. Why you want to focus on what is inside people's pants is weird to me.
No, because what's inside people's pants can cause me to be raped in my own private space.
Honestly,
it's a fact.
Women are raped in their households all the time by people they know.
By people with a penis.
Women are not raped in toilets by trans women.
By people with a penis.
Michael, do you wish to add to this debate?
I just don't know what I think. I really don't. Hope he doesn't come to me. Yeah, it is unusual. I hope by the time he comes to me, I will have worked out what I think.
It'll be ad time.
2 points, really. In terms of lavatory cubicles, trains, restaurants, aeroplanes, you can have the same space used by everybody.
They're already unisex.
Yeah. And there are a lot of restaurants in London where there are. But the trouble is changing rooms and so on. Seems to me the only answer there, you've got to have 4 changing rooms rather than 2.
Well, or do what my local gym has done. They've gone from a sort of like space where everybody just gets changed and showered sort of in the communal area. They now have individual cubicles, but then not all buildings will have the space to do that.
And the cost of doing that is huge. Yeah. And frankly, there are better things to spend that money on, I'm afraid, even though the trans issue isn't hugely important. Local councils can't afford to change all their swimming pools and their gyms and so on. So I'm not helping here much.
Well, you've brought us up to the ad break. I thought we were going to get 2 questions into this section, but things took a turn, didn't they? It's 8:45.
LBC.
Getting ready for the May Bank holiday? At Waitrose, there's 25% off 6 or more bottles of wine or fizz over £6. Like a fruity San Leo Prosecco, perfect with aged Parma ham, or a crisp Whispering Angel Rosé, ideal for your first barbecue. And our #1 Chablis, the aromas of fresh peach pair beautifully with a seafood salad. Savour the bank holiday with some great savings. Waitrose, the home of food lovers. Selected stores online, subject to availability. Excludes Scotland, boxed wines and bottles priced £100 and over.
The Hillary's mid-season sale is on, with up to 40% off hundreds of made-to-measure styles. Plus, for a limited time only, there's a huge extra 15% off everything. That's 15% off every blind, every curtain, every shutter, and our stylish garden pergolas too. Don't forget, with Hillary's, measuring and fitting is always included. So get window-wise and book your free in-home appointment today at hillarys.co.uk. But hurry! The extra 15% off ends the 1st of June. Conditions apply.
Go all Irish to France with great low prices. With Irish Ferries, you can for less. Irish Ferries, see travel differently. T's and C's apply.
When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you.
Life feels better with a smile. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Modern, comfortable and affordable dentistry for all. See online for our price match promise. Keep on smiling.
Keep on smiling. Keep on smiling. And the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk.
McDonald's breakfast is turning up the heat with a spicy new twist. Calm down, not that spicy. Breakfast is for savouring, not suffering. Introducing McDonald's breakfast with Frank's Red Hot Ketchup. A spicy breakfast, suitable for the morning. Until 8th of June, served until 11 a.m, subject to availability.
Cross Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
8:46. Next question is from Robert in the Cotswolds, and he's putting it to Layla Cunningham, nearly renamed you there, Michael Crick, Joe Grady and Gito Harry. Right, is it un-British to swear at politicians over their policies? Rachel Reeves was sworn at by a van driver when she visited a petrol station forecourt in Leeds this week to announce the 3-month extension to the freeze in fuel duty. Well, as the only politician on the panel, Layla, are you being sworn at when you're on the campaign trail?
All the time.
Really?
Yeah. Come on. All the time. I think sadly, it's part and parcel of... But not only sworn at, I think when you're a politician, people feel they can comment on everything about you. Oh, Layla, I didn't know you were so tall. Oh, Layla, it's not right. But I think that clip really highlighted a real deep-seated anger at what's happening. And perhaps it was wrong. Did he swear at her? I didn't see the whole video.
Apparently he did. But I mean, there is a difference between sort of being quite blunt with a politician and actually using insulting language and appearing very aggressive.
Yeah. Rachel Reeves should never be subjected to that, whether you disagree with her or not. But there is an underlying anger and frustration at people who are, number one, if that man, I think, spoke about a flag, you do feel, you do feel that people who are fighting for British values are always deemed to be sowing division and hate. And people are working so hard and not feeling like they're getting along. So there is anger there. And I don't condone swearing at any politician because it's an awful feeling, to be in the public and have someone come at you like that.
But you had your party leader wanting to buy the man a pint, and you had Zia Youssef wanting to offer him a peerage if someone could track him down. I mean, that's not quite the same as what you're saying.
No, I mean, he shouldn't have sworn at her. But the sentiment he expressed, I think, is very widespread. And I think many people would express that sentiment, and he expressed it on behalf of many people in the country.
And what did you make of her reaction?
I didn't actually hear him swearing in the video.
Oh, he did, yeah.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
But what did you make of how she reacted to it?
I mean, she said she loves Britain, and I think some people fundamentally take issue with that because they do feel that we have a party that perhaps doesn't love Britain as much as that man in the van.
But she made clear she did.
I mean, words are easy,
Well, so you're doubting that she loves her country?
Well, we have a prime minister that went after veterans. As a previous job, he went after people who fought for this country. I think
that's because he loved our laws, and he felt that certain veterans were breaching our laws and breaching our human rights. There are different ways of loving your country. Loving your country isn't always putting up a flag on the back of your van. It can involve many, many other things. And you just have one way of loving your country. Rachel Reeves has another, and I probably have another. But I think we should all respect the fact that we love our country, but in different ways.
I think when two people talk about loving their country, I think it's prioritising the people of this country. And people, perhaps British people, no longer feel prioritised by the government for various reasons that we're not going to get into. And I think that's what it fundamentally comes down to. I think British people are standing up and saying, we are here, please respect us, we should be valued and we should be prioritised by our government, and they just don't feel that.
But then you said earlier, you are the daughter of immigrants. So at what point should your parents then have been regarded as British, and at what point should they have been regarded as second-class citizens and not treated in the same way as the rest of us?
My parents came here with the full intention of integrating and assimilating. They came here in the 60s, and they came here for a love of the country. They didn't come here to import their own ways of life and their own values and basically say...
But everybody who come, most groups who come here in one way or another. I mean, take Jewish people. They come here. They still have their religious festivals. They have their all their Jewish culture. Many of them, their families have been here for more than 100 years. So all the different groups bring in something. Sometimes
Michael,
they adapt.
That there is sectarian politics, Islamist sectarian politics that is on the rise in this country, and anyone who calls it out is said to be sowing division or hatred. It is an issue. And I think it's a danger.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's not. It is an issue, but I'm not. I'd also. But there are certain people on the right who would lead you to believe that all Muslims are Islamists, that all Muslims are, But the way in which some of you speak.
That you see, you are framing it that way because it suits your. That's not true. There is a distinction between Muslims like myself and radical Islamists, and when pointing out Islamism becomes, you're called a bigot or you're called a racist. That is a failure of government. We have to call out people who are here who do not want good for our country, who want to destroy it and who want to bring harm. And the fact that anyone who calls it out...
I accept there are some of those, and it's not just in terms of terrorism and so on. I mean, the brilliant BBC work that they've done on migrants who are carrying on hugely criminal businesses on our high street, for instance, is not to be welcomed. But we've got to be measured and toneful and respectful here in this conversation.
Do you not think I've been
try
respectful?
And make out that most. Well, I do think that there are people on the right who make a huge thing of this and exaggerate it.
You both had a good go. I want to get the other two involved, sitting here on the sidelines. Joe.
We're still on Rachel Reeves.
Yeah, we are. Shall I remind you of the question?
I remember the question.
Is it un-British to swear at politicians over their policies?
Look, whether it's un-British or not, I have no idea. And I'm a bit torn on this one with Rachel Reeves because I think, I'm not a politician, but I'm kind of in the public eye a bit. And I think, it made me feel uneasy watching her be subjected to that. And I agree with what Michael was just saying. I do think that we have created an environment, and I think some of the reform men have been key in this. It's difficult to have a calm and decent conversation. I have to say, though, if I'd have been in Rachel Reeves' shoes, I think I would have said to that man, come here, get out your van. Don't shout at me. You want to have a chat? Come and speak to my face. And I think that, we've got a bit of a disconnect with our politicians not necessarily knowing how to speak to people and handle those situations. And then I think the other challenge is they're not really delivering an economic platform. So the man in the van was going on about flags or whatever. But, he could...
It's very interesting you say that she should have asked him to come and have a chat, because she could have probably charmed him into submission, which, if Nigel Farage was in that situation, that's absolutely what he would have done.
Michelle Obama always says that it's harder to hate close up, and I think you have to kind of have front in those situations, and it's hard for her to have front because I don't think she's got answers, and I think that's the problem for
the trouble you also have now is that politicians feel physically threatened in a way they never used to. We've had 2 MPs murdered in the last 10 years in a way that we never had. And a few before then, actually. But it has got worse. And you can see how, whereas 25 years ago, somebody might, even a woman politician might have said, get out your van, let's talk it through. And now I can see why they don't.
I agree with that. But if I could just say one more thing, the issue is that, we've got the guy in the van with his flag kind of cheering on reform. But the guy who's leading reform has taken £5 million and won't answer questions about it. That guy's never going to see £5 million, but he's kind of cheering something on, and he's, gobbing off at
And
Reeves.
actually, I think that's the more important issue.
Yeah,
Nigel Farage saying, I'd like to buy that guy a pint. And Zia Youssef saying he should be given... actually, in a way, I support that because it undermines the Lords. But, that is encouraging.
Yeah, it is. It's exciting.
And Robert Jenrick, he said, he sounds British to me, Rachel, good for him. This reaction explains why Reeves rarely leaves her bunker in Westminster. Guito.
What I hate is that so many people in politics at the moment, and our politics is angry and polarised, and without seeing the paradox and the contradiction, a lot of people will say, I hate the people over here who, are anti-Jewish. And the same people over there will say, but I hate people over there who are anti-Muslims. Why can't more people see across the whole issue and not be forced to pick a side, to say that the issue is that somebody is rude to somebody, whether that is a lefty being rude to a person of the right or someone on the right being rude about someone on the left? There is a temptation that's even creeped into this conversation that people on the right not just advocate different policies, but somehow are worse people. That's what I'm sure you get it. I've got it all the time. And then it works to something even more perverse, where people on the left think because they are better people, because of their values, then they can do exactly the same thing as people on the right, but somehow their motives allow them to be benign actors who mess it up accidentally, rather than malicious, nasty, horrible Tories or Reform people who actually go out there deliberately to do that. If everybody stepped back and just calmed down and showed a little bit of respect and played, to use your rugby metaphor, play the ball, not the man or the woman. And the temptation, and Labour are worse than almost anyone for doing this, is to play the man or the woman rather than the ball, because they're not equipped to play the ball. They find it too difficult, and Rachel Reeves hasn't got the answers.
On that controversial note, we'll move on to another question. We've literally got two and a half minutes left, so 45 seconds from you each on this one. This is from Jamie. Wes Streeting is promising what he calls a wealth tax that works, but would he just chase wealth out of the country? Now, he's argued for equalising capital gains tax, the tax paid on profits made when you sell an asset that has increased in value with income tax. Guto.
It's not as mad and unworkable as other versions of wealth taxes that I've seen. We can't go into the detail. But again, it's chasing the wrong stick. It's trying to raise even more money rather than address the fact that we spend far too much money in one large block on welfare and on pensions and then on interest debt. If we address that, there'd be more money to cut taxes, help students, build infrastructure, pay nurses more, all the things that people on the right and the left want. We can't do any of that while we're prepared to see the welfare budget balloon year after year after year after year unchecked.
The thing is, investment and startups and wealth is mobile, and we should be doing everything to attract them into this country. And these kind of measures just detracts them. And what people don't realise, let them leave, let the wealth creators leave. If you tax the wealth creators so much that they leave, there'll be no more wealth. And when the top payers leave, it's the bottom payers that end up making up the difference. And that's what we've seen. Since they took out the non-dom, we've had the highest exodus of millionaires. Our tax burden's increased. We need the wealth creators to create the wealth. And also, capital gains has already been taxed. That is money that was invested, that was taxed. It's an extra layer of tax on already taxed income.
Okay. Joe.
For me, I'm like, if these people aren't paying their tax, let them leave. If the people that own our water companies that are creaming off profits want to go and let someone more ethical take over, good. If the people, running corporations that business models only rely on paying people poverty wages want to leave and let someone fill the void, good. And if we talk about tax, we have seen the systematic erosion of a higher income tax in the UK. You're into history, so you probably already know this, but for the listeners, in the 40s, the standard rate of tax was 45%. We know now that's what higher rate payers pay. Back in the 40s, it was 97% for the higher rate of tax.
You want to go back to the 40s?
No, but hear me out. That stayed the same until roughly the 70s, when it came down to something like 70%. And then from the 80s and 90s onwards, it's been around 40, 45, 50 at its peak. That is one of the biggest problems. So Wes Streeting is even scratching the surface of what a proper wealth tax would be in this country.
But there's a very good reason why governments could get away with those huge rates of tax in the old days, as Layla has pointed out, is that people are much more mobile now. So people would put up with a 98% rate of tax, although I still think it's balmy, and it must have deterred them from working. You have got to think through here. Actually, if we put up taxes, sometimes you end up raising less revenue. Now, I agree. There is a large gap between capital gains tax rates and income tax rates, and it seems to me rather wide. But we've got to think through. There's no point in putting up a tax and you end up with raising less.
Okay. A fun question from Carl. We're on the brink of a bank holiday weekend with an added heat wave. What's your best tip for keeping cool during this roasting long weekend? Layla.
Multiple fans directly on your face.
Multiple?
At least two.
Okay. Michael?
Well, that's terribly ungreen and a terrible use of energy.
Terrible.
Open as many.
For my comfort? What's better?
Open. Well, for you then, maybe.
Again.
Yeah. But no, just open as many windows as you can and hope to create some drafts around the house. But don't forget to close them when you go out, and the ground floor ones at night.
Joe.
Well, Corey's nan said a nice cup of tea. But for me, going to the park, maybe getting a Solero from the ice cream van.
Can I suggest a mint magnum?
I do like mint ice cream. A mint magnum maybe then. Maybe a little beer. Think about how to change the world for the better, Ian, that kind of thing.
I'm sure you do that all the time. Gitto.
Aperol spritz, lots of ice.
Well, that was short and brief, which is good because we're
I can see we're out of time.
Yeah, we really are. I would have a freezing cold lilt.
Oh,
with
lilt.
a totally tropical taste.
Lilt is a great.
Thank you all very much indeed for coming on the show tonight. Now, we are going to return to one of our subjects in the next hour, and it is now I've forgotten what it is now. What are we talking about? Rachel Reeves. I've had such a good time in that hour that I've forgotten what we're doing next. Rachel Reeves surprised onlookers on a petrol station forecourt when she gave a stern rebuke to a foul-mouthed heckler who shouted at her from his van as she conducted a broadcast interview. Well, I'm wondering whether you think that she had the right reaction to this. Is it fair to ever shout abuse at politicians, or do you think, well, it comes with the territory? This is nothing new. This has happened over centuries where people have taken the opportunity to bring politicians down a peg or two. Or do you think, no, like Rachel Reeves, it's un-British? 0345 6060 973.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, visiting theme parks, zoos and museums will be cheaper this summer as part of efforts to ease the cost of living. The Chancellor says she's cutting the VAT on ticket prices to help families enjoy the school holidays. Rachel Reeves also says supermarkets should pass on savings from reductions to import tariffs on more than 100 food products. But her shadow, Sir Mel Stride, says it's too little, too late.
Today's announcements will bring little comfort to the hundreds of thousands of people who have lost their jobs, to the countless businesses that have folded, and to those high streets which are now hollowed out.
Children aged between 5 and 15 will also be able to travel for free on buses in England in August, as reported earlier. The latest documents released about Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor's appointment as UK trade envoy reveal the late Queen pushed for it. A government memo shows she was very keen for him to take on a prominent role representing Britain's national interests. Andrew stepped down in 2011 over concerns about his ties with Jeffrey Epstein. He continues to deny wrongdoing. New guidance confirms toilets should be used on the basis of biological sex. A code covers a range of scenarios, including competitive sport and hospital wards, following a Supreme Court ruling last year on the legal definition of a woman. Dr Joe Grady, General Secretary of the University and College Union, told LBC the advice is restrictive.
There is no data suggesting that trans women or trans men are hanging out in toilets waiting to attack people. This guidance is going to be impractical, it's going to be unworkable, and it is going to encourage people to be targeting and seeking out trans people, policing bodies in a way that I think is entirely inappropriate and totally unhelpful.
And net migration to the UK has fallen to below 200,000 for the first time since the start of the pandemic. In the 12 months to December, it fell by almost half compared to 2024. And thousands of Aston Villa fans have been celebrating their first major European trophy since 1982. The players have been taking part in an open-top bus parade after winning the Europa League yesterday. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 11 points at 10,443. The pound buys $1.36 and €1.15. LBC weather: rain lingering in the north tonight. This will become confined to the far north later. Mostly clear elsewhere, a low of 9 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
5 minutes past 9, a very good evening to you. If you were listening to Cross Question, I think that was a really good example of what a proper debate should be like, where there was some very feisty exchanges, but it was all very respectful, wasn't it? Well, at least I thought it was. Hope you enjoyed it. Right, we are going to return to one of the subjects that we talked about in Cross Question. That is this incident that Rachel Reeves experienced yesterday, where she went to a petrol station forecourt in, I think it was in her constituency in Leeds, and, she was abused by a van driver. He swore at her. So my question to you, and we're going to hear the exchange in a few moments' time, but my question to you is this. Was this an example of un-British bad manners, or was this exactly within the British spirit? Now, I think you can argue both sides of that fairly convincingly, because it's always been the case that the general public have always heckled or hurled abuse at politicians over the centuries. You go back to the 18th, 19th centuries, and you look at the political cartoons of the time, and you see that, the political cartoons, drawn by Hogarth, literally 200 years ago, actually nearly 300 years ago, absolutely abusive, far more than modern day cartoonists, and they would depict scenes of the general public haranguing politicians in the most vicious way. So I wonder whether a bit of pearl clutching is going on here, where, it's never nice to see an aggressive man swearing at a woman. I completely accept that. But should this be something that comes with the territory of being a politician, or should politicians have to put up with this? As I say, a lot of people will say, well, this is within the British spirit. But Rachel Reeves' reaction was, well, no, that's very un-British to harangue somebody in this way. It's certainly unchivalrous. I think that is without doubt the case. Well, let's hear what happened when Rachel Reeves went to this petrol station to talk about the fuel duty freeze extension.
Get Labour out. Get Keir Starmer out. Nigel Farage. You are Nigel. We're going to get arrested. We've got English flags on here, Rachel. We're going to get arrested. You're ruining the country. Get Keir Starmer out. Look, England flags. You're useless. Labour parties are useless.
I love our country. I love our country. And one of the things about our country is good manners. It's not very British. Right. Very good. You can put that on the telly. Right.
She was in the middle of doing a broadcast interview at the time. I thought what Jo Grady said on Cross Question was quite interesting, and where she said that she should have invited the man. In fact, there seemed to be more than one there, unless I was mistaken. Invited the man to have a proper conversation about it, because I think that would have disarmed him. I think Rachel was absolutely right to say that it was bad manners to shout abuse in that way. But do you understand why it happened? Do you understand the motivation of the man who was saying that? And how do you think Rachel Reeves handled it? She was composed, made a joke of it at the end. Rachel Reeves has, and I mean this with the greatest affection, got one of the dirtiest laughs among any politician that I've ever heard. And it is infectious. And I just wish she could do that a little bit more, because she is actually a very funny person. I've told this story before, but I had dinner with her once at a literary festival, and she was absolutely riotous, but she can't seem to convey that when she's in front of a microphone, unless it's in a situation like that where she said to the reporter, well, put that on your television, and then I won't try and emulate her dirty laugh, because I don't really have it. Well, do I have it? I have a Muttley laugh. That's what I do in those circumstances. So I'd love to hear what you made of that. Do you have sympathy with Rachel Reeves, or do you have more sympathy with the man who was basically hurling abuse at her? 0345 6060 973. Is it very British to do that sort of thing? And what does that question even mean to an extent? Laura Windsor is the so-called Queen of Etiquette. Laura, very good evening to you. Now, obviously, he was rude to her, but in circumstances like this, do you understand why?
Well, politics is always a very interesting area, isn't it? It's not everyday life. People have strong opinions and may get carried away. However, using bad language wasn't very gentlemanly of the gentleman. So I believe that it's good to put your case forward, but in a more mannerly way. He didn't have to resort to using bad language.
Well, he certainly got attention by doing it, didn't he? It's a bit like when we talk about all of these protests that go on in London outside Parliament, which we then report on. And of course, we wouldn't have reported on them had they not been very, very loud. So it's the same here. If he had just said to her, "My good woman, could I possibly have a word about your economic record?" I'm not sure that her minders would have let her respond.
No, absolutely not. I don't think it was consciously put forward. He just lost it and gave her, told her what he thought. I don't think he did it on purpose for attention, using bad language, that is.
And do you think it would have been a good idea for her to try and diffuse the situation by inviting him over for a chat?
I think so. Politics is an odd area, and if someone has an opinion, I think as a politician, it would be most effective to speak to the person and try and understand. Well, I think we all understand why the gentleman lashed out, but the art of conversation is, and every politician has acquired that art of responding and getting out of sticky situations. What she should have done was to say, "My good man, tell me what are you thinking? Let's try and work it out." Because I think in that way, he may have changed. He would have changed his mind a little bit about her.
I always remember when I used to take over from Nigel Farage when he was a presenter on this station, and he would deal with callers who had rung up to really have a go at him. They clearly couldn't stand him, and they were basically spoiling for a fight. And he would delight in charming them off the trees.
Yeah.
And it would work virtually every time where they parted as friends. And I've always thought that's a really good skill, not just for a radio presenter to have, but for a politician to have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely. And he's where he should be then.
Well, that's for others to decide, I suppose. But
well, as a politician, if he can dodge angry lashing out, then he's in the right place, because that is the job of a politician.
Not everybody has the ability to react in the moment. And I mean, there are countless occasions when I can remember on this programme where somebody's been fairly aggressive in a call, and then 2 minutes later, I would think of a brilliant line to go back to them on, but it's 2 minutes too late. And politicians, I think, I'm sure Rachel Reeves went away from that thinking, "Oh, damn, if only I'd said this or reacted in that way, it would have been much better."
Yes, I feel like that all the time, actually. So, yes, I understand that.
But what can be done for people to maybe be a little bit more reactive in the moment?
Practice. You need to practice it. You need to put yourself in situations where you have to defend yourself in a diplomatic way. That's the only way, really. Just train the brain.
I'm just now imagining Rachel Reeves' special advisors throwing a beast at her in the Treasury so she could practice.
Well, that's a good way of doing it.
Well, indeed. Thank you very much indeed. That's Laura Windsor there, the Queen of Etiquette. Right, let's take a couple of texts before we go to your calls after the break. This is from Toby, who says, "I personally thought Rachel Reeves was a bit of a hypocrite to reference good manners when it's clear she massively misrepresented her career experience, and secondly told us she had a fully costed manifesto when it's patently clear that that was not true." This one from Mike: "As soon as people hear a northern accent, that automatically assume that they automatically assume the person is aggressive, demented, and stupid. He's clearly an actor." Oh, so this is a false flag operation, is it? That I mean, please. What? So you think that the Labour Party hired an actor to drive in a white van past Rachel Reeves on a petrol station forecourt to hurl abuse at her? Mike, that says an awful lot about you, I'm afraid, and it doesn't reflect well on you. Claire says, "I didn't have sympathy, but the more I watch it, she was professional, and ultimately, what would we want from MPs?" Your call's next, 0345 6060 973. It's 9:15.
This is LBC.
Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And come on in to Classic FM Calm, LBC's soothing sister station. Find peace in the music with Classic FM Calm. Listen on Global Player or ask your smart speaker to play Classic FM Calm.
For unbeatable prices on printer ink and toner, more people are switching to cartridgepeople.com. Like Max, whose kids have discovered printable colouring sheets. And now, there's no going back. And Jen, a business owner who wants printer cartridges so economical, she can print herself a pay rise. For unbeatable prices on printer ink and toner, switch to cartridgepeople.com. T's and C's apply. See online for our price promise.
The following is from TfL.
I got loads of flowers the other day, and messages from people I didn't even know. My mates spelled out my name in tea lights, and my mum hung my favourite footy shirt on the railings, next to the lamppost, where I got killed. By a nice lady, just someone who thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Is your cat drinking enough? Discover Purina One Hydrolife and help support their daily hydration with a taste they'll enjoy. Purina One Hydrolife. Make it easy.
Iain Dale on LBC.
17 minutes past 9 on LBC. Right, was Rachel Reeves right to react in the way that she did to the abuse that she got from a van driver on a petrol station forecourt? It seems to me that too many people are having a go at Rachel Reeves when it wasn't her that was hurling the abuse. But let's see what you think. Matt's in Oxford. Hello, Matt.
Hello, thanks for taking my call. I completely agree with you. I mean, I haven't seen the footage. I only have a radio, so I just heard it when you played it. And it sounded like she handled herself pretty well. It sounded like a guy in a van being a bit of a pillock, taking his moment. And she went, excuse me, good manners, which I completely agree with her about. It sounded to me like he came off worse than she did. And I can't understand why anyone would suggest in that moment, in that situation, she should think of inviting him into a psychiatrist's chair. I mean, it's kind of bonkers. Well, we've reached a point where we can kind of overanalyze something. From the 12 seconds I heard, some chap had something to say, and she put him in his place. That's what I heard.
Yeah, that's what I heard too.
And then moved on, like we all should. I mean, it's really weird that we're getting super hung up over.
Well,
it sounds quite self-evident to me that I haven't seen the pictures, but sounds like, yeah, she handled it pretty damn well.
Yeah, I don't criticise her at all for anything that she did or said. I think she could have possibly. But then again, if she thought that he was being very aggressive, and clearly from what he said he was being quite aggressive, she didn't want to make. He was driving by as he shouted it.
Right.
Yeah.
So she had cameras in front of her.
Yeah.
So he would have seen that. So she had only about the time. And she did what she did, and it sounded pretty damn good to me. I feel like a bit of a plank if I was driving off after being told to, show some damn manners.
Well, it'd be interesting because the Sun always tracks these people down. Somehow they manage to. So I suspect tomorrow we're going to see his side of the story.
I don't imagine he would have done well if she'd invited him over,
No, and Rachel Reeves can be quite direct and to the point. I mean, she's not backwards in coming forward, and I would have quite liked to have witnessed that confrontation.
Yeah, me too. Fair play to her, absolutely.
I'll tell you what, maybe she should invite him for a coffee in the Treasury.
I reckon he's embarrassed himself enough, don't you?
See, I don't think he will think he's embarrassed himself. I think he will talk to his friends and play the big I am about it.
Wow.
But you never
small circle of friends.
But if you're listening, the van driver, do let us know what you were thinking at the time, because sometimes, these coincidences do happen. Matt, thank you. This is from Anonymous. Do put your names on text, please. Can we please clarify something here? The guy wasn't a van driver. He was the driver of a van. And you win Pedant of the Week. He was without doubt a very skilled tradesman, hard-working, frustrated taxpayer. Well, that may well be the case, but he was driving a van, so therefore he was a van driver. Now, he may have other skills as well, but I don't think we need to get hung up on that, do we? Let's go to Gurnham in Manchester. Good evening, Gurnham. What would you like to say?
Hello. Well, I'd say two things. I think, respectfully, the Queen of Etiquette had few too many G&Ts, and the false flag chap was just on drugs in his grandma's basement. But I think she did really well. If somebody's screaming, shouting at you, it can be quite frightening. So I think she did really well. And the chap on your cross point that said you should have engaged with him in a conversation, that could have gone really wrong. Look what happened to Joe Cox. Look what happened to that Tory MP. You just don't know. So you take the situation kind of as you find it. And your point about Nigel Farage charming the birds out of the trees from behind the microphone. Have you seen him out and about when somebody asks him about the 5 billion quid he took? Not so charming.
Oh, well, look, we all have not so charming sides to us, don't we?
Well, it's easy to be charming behind a microphone. She wasn't.
I need to work at it though a bit, don't I?
Well, that's up to you. I mean, I'm not casting aspersions on you, but except that you might be a little bit too pro Nigel Farage. But we all can't be perfect. And I'll be honest, if I saw somebody in a white van that kind of had too many, had more tattoos than teeth, I'd probably react very differently to Rachel. So I thought she did brilliantly.
Well, as I say, I'm not having a go at her at all. I think she did react.
I'm not suggesting you are.
I think she reacted with decorum to it. And she could have reacted very differently. I mean, I wonder how one or two other politicians might have reacted.
I think to be composed under that barrage, and it was very aggressive. Let's not beat about the bush. They were aggressive. They were aggressive and nasty, So let's not beat about the bush. I think she did really well keeping her composure and actually, turning around and making a joke about it in the moment, because not all of us would have reacted like that. I don't think I would have done. I think I'd have said something back to him that was equally aggressive. But I'm probably too many tattoos and not enough teeth as well.
Well, I can't see you going, but. I'm just wondering what the public reaction would have been if she'd just turned to him and shouted, "Oh, just do one, you effing imbecile," or something like that. I mean,
totally understandable, but she's got a lot more class than that, clearly.
Yeah, exactly. But you could understand it, couldn't you? And I can think of one or two politicians who might well have done that.
Yeah, and they, I think, and that's why I say I think she's handled it brilliantly. I'm no huge fan, but I don't think she's done a rubbish job. But I'm no fan. But I think on that front, she handled it well. I saw somebody being really aggressively shouted at, and they handled it with decorum and a bit of class.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you very much. Alan says, politicians today are absolutely pathetic over heckling, whether it's Reeves, Jonathan Ashworth, more than Reeves. Well, I have to say, I saw some of the, I would call it stalking of Jonathan Ashworth during the general election campaign. That wasn't heckling. I mean, that was evil and vicious. Anyway, Alan continues, do none of these people remember John Major on his soapbox surrounded by hecklers in 1992, Neil Kinnock dealing with a militant at Labour conference in 1986, or Margaret Thatcher's effortless put-downs? Yes, I remember all of those things, but John Major had a loud hailer, which also always gives you an advantage over any heckler. Look, heckling is part of Britain's political history. I remember in the 1983 general election going to a meeting in St Andrew's Hall in Norwich with a friend of mine and to see Michael Foot speak. And he was the leader of the Labour Party at the time. And he was a brilliant speaker. And my friend Tim and I sat in the middle of this hall surrounded by 2,000 cheering Labour Party supporters. And we heckled Michael Foot. What utter fools we were. Because, of course, he had a microphone, we didn't, and he was brilliant in his put-downs to us. So I'm not saying that politicians shouldn't be heckled, but I think there is a time and a place for it, and I'm not sure a petrol station forecourt is the right place for it. Paul is in Sherborne in Dorset. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Iain. I just wanted to say that I thought the best response is if she said to him, "Are you one of my constituents? If so, would you like to book an appointment at my surgery on Friday and we can have a frank discussion?"
Oh, I didn't hear her say that.
But that would have been a good approach, I feel.
Oh, so she didn't say, she didn't, I thought you said she had said that.
No, she hadn't. But if she had said that, I feel that would have been a full and frank discussion with one of her constituents, if he was that.
Well, it's certainly a full and frank discussion. I think we heard that in the clip there. But do you think it is ever acceptable for a member of the public to berate a politician in public like that?
Well, not in that manner, no. I think in a more polite and gentlemanly fashion.
OK, Paul, thank you. This is another anonymous one. Why don't you put your names to these? The politicians themselves spend all day heckling each other in the House of Commons. That's not very good manners or British. Perhaps Rachel Reeves should look a little closer to home at her colleagues and the opposite benches before condemning anyone else for heckling. There is a point there that you make, because Rachel Reeves is actually an inveterate heckler on the front bench. But, I mean, it's a different circumstance, isn't it? I mean, that's where I think we do have to differentiate. Heckling another politician in the House of Commons, there is no hint of expected violence there. If you are somebody hurling abuse in a very aggressive manner in a public place against a female politician, and I differentiate here, I mean, it shouldn't be acceptable for a male politician either, but I think when it's a female politician, because of what we've seen in recent years about attacks on politicians, I just think that is unacceptable. Let's go to Nick, who's a new caller in Shifnal in Shropshire. That's a new one on me, Nick. What would you like to say?
Hey Ian, how's it going? Shifnal by Telford, so close to Birmingham.
Okay,
how are you?
I've been to Telford. Very well, thank you. What's your view?
Good. Long-time listener, by the way. You got a fantastic show, especially like Crosstalk. So, I think it probably stepped over the line a little bit, but I think it shows a bit of a demonstration of the rhetoric in the country at the moment in terms of how people are feeling. They're just super frustrated with politicians because it is all talk. And you made a very good point just recently with the previous caller about what happens in PMQs and Parliament. You know, they banter all the time. There's loads of kind of crosstalk. But fundamentally, I think Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer and the Labour government fundamentally have done nothing to change the country. They've had 2 years now. They fundamentally didn't have a plan when they came into government, and it's showing, right? And all we're going to see with the new Prime Minister electorship and everything else, it's just going to be a mess for another 6 months. So I think the country is just super frustrated.
Yeah, and frustrated people do things like that van driver did. I still don't think it's justifiable in the way that he did it, but clearly...
Absolutely, but if you put yourself in his shoes, right? So imagine that kind of salary for that kind of job. I can imagine it might be quite hard, and he's feeling it personally. Rachel Reeves probably isn't. There's millions of people up and down the country, right, that are feeling it. I think fundamentally with politics at the moment, and I've listened to your shows for absolutely months, maybe years, people are just bored now because it's the same old thing time and time again. No one's actually making the bold decisions.
We won't clip up that sentence if you don't mind, Nick. I've been listening to your show for months, maybe years, and people are just bored.
No, sorry, not bored of you.
I know, but you know how people misinterpret these things.
Oh, you're a fantastic presenter, but you know what I mean. Like fundamentally, nothing is happening in government at the moment. Party politics is fundamentally broken. So I'm not a reform. I've voted Conservative, right, for years, my whole life. Because it's like fundamentally benefited me. I did change my mind in the last election and voted Labour because of everything that Boris did and the previous government, and I didn't think Sunak was good. But bloody hell, I mean, there has to be a fundamental change in what we do, and someone needs to take some bold decisions to change the direction of this country. Otherwise, we're not going to go anywhere. There'll be no growth. There'll be no prosperity. I literally walked past a graduation ceremony today in central London when I was down there. All these hundreds of students in their gowns, getting their pictures and everything else. Literally, I'm 42, walked past them thinking, you're not going to get a job. This country is fundamentally broken at the moment, and something needs to happen to change it.
Well, it's not totally broken. There are some really good things happening in our country. And I think I just had a text that has made me think of a lot of the 17, 18-year-olds who are currently doing their A-levels. Yeah. Ruby has just sent this in. Iain, I just want to thank you in your show. Today I had my first politics A-level exam, and so much of the current evidence I used in my essays were things I heard on your show and others. Thank you for being very informative. Now, when I get texts like that, I mean, I don't think, and I think a lot of my colleagues would agree with this, when you get texts like that, it really makes your job worthwhile. I mean, I think it is worthwhile anyway. But when you know that, and I often get emails from parents saying, well, my 14-year-old son or daughter has got interested in politics because of the things that they've heard on LBC. And I think it's just so important that younger people are engaged in these kind of things. But then I look at what happens to Rachel Reeves, and you think, well, is that really going to encourage these young people to want to think about going into politics in any meaningful way in the future?
Yeah, I think it's a moment in time, right? And it will pass. It was definitely wrong. I think you and your fellow presenters, so I pretty much listen from 7 a.m. till like 11, like always on in the background. I've never learned more about politics and what's going on and the different views. Like, it's a really good broad barometer of what's happening in the country at the moment. I just wish you guys were the politicians, if I'm honest.
Well, some of us have tried and failed, Nick.
Well, I know you have. But absolutely, like, you actually have a debate and talk about the truth rather than lip service to try and win voters. And I think that's fundamentally what's wrong with this country. Every single politician, apart from Farage, maybe, who I definitely don't support a lot of his values, doesn't speak the truth. And that's why I think Reform are getting a massive swing, because people are levitating to someone who's actually going to talk the truth. And actually, if you listen, I'm sure you have many times, like Wes Streeton's speech and even Burnham as well, they're just not saying anything. They're talking about generalistic ideas, but not actually talking about what they're going to do, and that's what this country needs.
Okay, Nick, thank you very much indeed for your call. We'll take more calls in a moment. What do you think of how Rachel Reeves reacted to the abuse that she got from that heckler in a van? 0345 6060 973. She accused him of not having any manners, and she said that she's very proud to be British. She loves her country. Well, is it part of the British political tradition that politicians do get heckled in this manner? Or do you think this guy went a little bit over the top, both in the aggression and indeed the language that he used? It's 9:33 on LBC, time for the news headlines with Darryl Jackson.
It'll be cheaper to visit attractions like theme parks, zoos and museums this summer. The Chancellor's announced a cut to VAT on tickets as part of efforts to ease the cost of living. The late Queen was very keen for Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor to take a prominent role in promoting Britain's national interests. The government has released the latest documents on his appointment as UK trade envoy. And a fundraiser has been started to help pay the funeral costs for three sisters whose bodies were found in the sea off Brighton Beach last week. Police are still trying to work out exactly what happened. LBC weather, rain lingering in the north tonight. This will become confined to the far north later. Mostly clear elsewhere, a low of 9 degrees.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
We honestly believe that he didn't know.
Straight to the point.
Has this country become almost ungovernable?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Where there should be vision, there is a vacuum.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
Switching to Vodafone full fibre broadband is now as easy as pie. Ooh, freshly baked. It's a walk in the park. Hello, little fella. It's like taking candy from a baby. Come on, as if I'd do that. With One Touch Switch, it's easy. We sort everything out for you. We even contact your current provider. Plus, we'll help towards leaving fees. Switch today to full fibre broadband with Vodafone.
Up to £200 credit to cover leaving fees. More information and terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Dear passengers, this is the final boarding call for all those whose minds are already elsewhere. Taking in the skyline of Hong Kong, feeling the energy of Mumbai, walking the historic streets of Boston, or heading out on safari near Johannesburg.
Wherever your mind is right now, we'll take you there. Discover the world with Swiss. Book your flight on swiss.com.
Calling all young creatives. It's time to get prepped for the art and design industry. And where better than Global Academy? Here's Keo, an art and design student in Year 12.
As an art student, we get the chance to work on our own pieces, either in the studio or using the digital software. Some of my work has also been shown in galleries, and last week I got the chance to attend a design agency to learn more about my future career.
Global Academy. Apply now and join us in Years 10 or 12. globalacademy.com.
Iain Dale on LBC.
9:36 on LBC. We'll come back to your calls on Rachel Reeves in just a moment. But first, a new report from the United States Congress has revealed the war in Iran has cost the US military $29 billion so far. This includes $300 million on fighter jets, which were downed by friendly fire. A phrase I absolutely loathe and detest, but I can't think of a better one. Colonel Simon Diggins joins me, former British Army officer, now a defence and security analyst and also contributing editor of the Defence on the Brink campaign group. Simon, $29 billion. Look, war is expensive, we know that, but that is a hell of a lot of money, isn't it?
Ian, good evening to you. Yes, it is. But put it in perspective, the total US defence budget per annum is $1 trillion. So that's my maths is completely wrong. That's between 2% and 3%. I think the real issue, real challenge is actually that a lot of people say that the true costs are not contained within that $29 billion. And it's not just things that haven't been included in terms of the war. So, for example, the costs of repairing damage to US bases and facilities across the Gulf. But there's also the kind of knock-on, the indirect consequential effects of the war in terms of the cost of living, particularly in America as well. And so I think one of the things that's going on in Congress, and they're very angry about this, is partly because Donald Trump has done this out with their equivalent of the War Powers Act. So there's some Democratic control elements there. They don't feel the true costs are being counted. And the Pentagon under Pete Hegseth is going to give him little bits of information at a time and coming back to them incrementally with more money required, and not giving them the full picture.
If that had been in this country, I'm sure that people would have been crying, yes, but that's $29 billion that could have been spent on the NHS or public services. I wonder how much outcry there will be from the American public on this.
I think that it's an interesting point, but so much of the things that we regard as central government business is done, if it's done at all, is done through their states in America itself. And so this, of course, is Congress, a federal organisation, and looking at the kind of federal budget from there. So if you like, the opportunity cost argument, which is, as you rightly put, is often, for in this case, where you spend money on defence, you could otherwise be spending on the NHS, welfare, or whatever, I think has less salience in America simply because their structure and their system is slightly different.
Now, 42 American aircraft have been lost or damaged over the last, well, what is it now, 2.5 months. That seems to be quite a lot. Now, they say, well, they've destroyed the entire Navy, Iranian Navy and Iranian Air Force. How long does it take to replenish supplies of planes? Because it must take quite a long time.
I think it depends on what the objects are. Some aircraft types, they've got significant amounts of reserves. I mean, we've all seen the photographs of the kind of reserves in the desert which they can use. What is taking time to replace is some of the really expensive anti-missile missiles, for example, the Patriot battery, which they used up at a massive rate. They fired off in the first 4 days of the war all the equivalent of all the Patriot missiles that are given to Ukraine over the previous 4 years. And these missiles, each missile cost millions of dollars. And they've often been fired against a drone that cost tens of thousands of dollars. So they will take time to replace. And that, I think, is an area of concern to them. It's having a knock-on effect already in terms of supply because European countries who might have Patriot themselves, the Ukrainians who've got Patriot, are saying, can we have missiles? And the Americans say, no, we need to replenish them ourselves. So it is having an effect on how the wars and defence more generally is being developed. But this is the United States of America. I mean, they have things in abundance that we simply don't have.
Drone warfare has been used here predominantly by the Iranians. What lessons, as a military man yourself, what lessons can we learn from this conflict about the conduct of future wars?
I think that the importance of drones and drone warfare, the idea of autonomous warfare, I think is there. And we've got the same lesson pretty well from Ukraine itself. What we haven't seen yet is the means of conducting offensive operations in a kind of drone warfare. And here, the analogy, and it's not an exact analogy, but the analogy is a bit with the First World War, where the combination of the First World War of quick-fire and artillery, machine guns and barbed wire pretty well produced a kind of static trench front for nearly 3 years, until there was an innovation, in this case the tank, and a change in tactics, which allowed a breakthrough. What we're seeing with the wars in Ukraine and the wars in the Gulf is the importance of drones in terms of defensive and ability at relatively low cost to sort of keep a numerically superior or even technically superior opponent at bay. What we haven't seen yet is the means to conduct offensive operations and to break through. So yes, it's important, but we haven't yet found the right balance in order to achieve that. And that, I think, will be the next stage.
And where are we in Britain with our supply of drones? Because I think we sent a lot to Ukraine. Again, it presumably takes quite a long time to manufacture new ones. Where are we on that?
Well, I think we're just starting to turn the corner very slightly. I mean, I don't... probably know a little bit more about the Army than perhaps the other two services. But the current Chief of General Staff has got what he calls his 2044. The armed forces will be what you might call legacy equipment, but still important, tanks, armoured vehicles and so forth. 40% will be sort of directed missiles and everything. And then 40% will be kind of throwaway fire and forget missiles that goes on from there. So we've got the concept, at least we're starting to think about the problem. And we're starting to develop the numbers. And I think the experience there is that of the Ukrainians. Ukrainians at the beginning of their war were producing drones in the thousands and tens of thousands. Everyone's very impressed. They're now literally, after 4 years, producing them by the million. And they're exporting that technology, not only just the technology of the missiles or the drones themselves, but also the technology of how to produce them at mass as well. I mean, the Danes, for example, and one of the Baltic countries have opened a drone factory producing numbers on exactly the same scale as the Ukrainians. So we can do it. And I've seen some indications that we're starting to grasp that. It's not the traditional defence, though. And that's, I think, the problem would be that some of our so-called defence primes, who have been used to a kind of rather sort of gentle parley between themselves and the Ministry of Defence over 15 years, with all the usual cock-ups as a result, are not well placed and not very good at responding quickly to the kind of demands that this new type of warfare are starting to produce.
I've got this bee in my bonnet about resilience at the moment in all sorts of areas, and I'm thinking of doing a book on it. But I mean, in terms of our UK resilience, it seems to me that one of our weakest areas in our defence capability is air defence. Now, I don't know how much drones can be deployed on that front, but is that, I mean, I'd be interested to hear your view on that as to how that can be improved. Oh, I think
the country that won the Battle of Britain, and we simply couldn't do anything like we don't have anything like the capabilities that the Ukrainians have got, or anything like the capabilities that the Israelis have got. I mean, our most effective air defence weapon is a Type 45 frigate, and currently, of the 6 we've got, 2 are currently operational, 4 are in kit form in Portsmouth Harbour, and we have a few other sort of missiles. We have an argument which says that we rely on NATO to do that, but I think it's one of those sort of sovereign capabilities you really got to have for yourself. If you can't defend your home base, you can't defend your homeland yourself, then you are really in trouble. And I think that's where we are.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you very much indeed. That's Colonel Simon Diggins there. Gordon has texted to say, I saw Rachel Reeves at your Edinburgh show last year. She was great. I don't know why she's so often so wooden in front of traditional media. With you, it was like a different person and a very likeable one. Well, Gordon, I couldn't agree more. I thought she was absolutely fantastic. And if anybody wants to hear that interview, it's on my All Talk feed. Just go back to last August, because she has got a very sort of effervescent personality, but you don't see that very often, do you, in the interviews that she gives? Right. We will take more of your calls in a minute. Are you on Rachel Reeves' side? Do you think she handled the situation in Leeds well? So it's all very well to think, well, she could have done this, she could have done that. In the moment, you just react by your natural instincts, don't you, when you have things like that? You always think of what you should have done or should have said a couple of minutes after the event, and you sort of kick yourself for not coming out with that really funny line that you could have done. I do that every night on the train home, thinking, I could have said that on the programme, or I should have said that. It doesn't really work, does it? 0345 6060 973. It's 9:45.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Net migration to this country halved in the last year. Is that a sign that we should all move on and stop fretting about it? Plus, how to stop young Brits leaving this country in their droves.
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Mr. and Little Miss are back in Happy Meal and they're off on a road trip. Your little one can go somewhere exciting with Little Miss Brave, laugh all the way there with Mr. Tickle, or make up an adventure all of their own. On this road trip, anything's possible. Some fun, some food, it's all inside this Happy Meal. Until the 8th of June from 11 a.m. Includes one pre-selected book or toy while stocks last, subject to availability.
Oh, bad traffic. Great news, isn't it? More time in the car. Joy. Maybe you don't feel it. Maybe you don't drive a Lexus NX yet. But when you do, you'll see the positive of peak hour, the delight in a detour, the love of the long way. The Lexus NX plug-in hybrid. Experience amazing before you arrive.
Feel every pass and every goal. Discover the next generation of televisions at John Lewis. Experience the full clarity of the latest RGB and OLED technology. Brought to you by some of the world's best brands. Price matched against 25 leading retailers with a 5-year guarantee on all TVs. Your best view of every game is available right now at John Lewis. It's football upgraded. T's and C's and exclusions apply. See johnlewis.com for details.
Getting ready for the May Bank holiday? At Waitrose, there's 25% off 6 or more bottles of wine or fizz over £6. Like a fruity Sanleo Prosecco, perfect with aged Parma ham, or a crisp Whispering Angel Rosé, ideal for your first barbecue. And our #1 Chablis. The aromas of fresh peach pair beautifully with a seafood salad. Savour the bank holiday with some great savings. Waitrose, the home of food lovers. Selected stores online, subject to availability. Exclude Scotland, boxed wines and bottles priced £100 and over.
Go all Irish to France with great low prices. With Irish Ferries, you can for less. Irish Ferries, see travel differently. T's and C's apply.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
9:48 on LBC. Anastasia is in Leeds. In fact, she's specifically in the west of Leeds, where Rachel Reeves is the local MP. Anastasia, what did you make of Rachel Reeves?
Oh, hello, Ian. I've only spoken to you once before.
But you do text me an awful lot, don't you?
You're very observant. You are a very good journalist, and I would like you to know that I know what makes a good journalist. Anyway.
Well, thank you.
Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Now, Rachel Reeves is my MP, and I did speak to her over Teams a little while ago, right? Now, I did a bit of research, just quick research, and apparently... the heckling would not have happened in Hampstead. Bit of alliteration there for you.
Why?
Well, I'm going to be blunt. I think it could well be a northern thing. But Rachel Reeves, I mean, if I had somebody screaming at me in the street, it would make me nervous. So I've decided I'm sympathetic towards Rachel. I really am. And I have met a lot of MPs. In fact, one year I got invited to 10 Downing Street.
I think that the fact that she was in the middle of a TV interview and she had a camera on her meant that she knew that she couldn't react possibly in a sweary way because it was all on film. So she was in a tricky position, and I think she handled herself well.
In reality, you don't know how you're going to react because it's in the moment. So I'm sympathetic. I know that I'm in her constituent area, and it's not easy being an MP, and certainly not the Chancellor. And I tell you what, when you haven't got a leg to stand on, it's more difficult to get into politics, and I can say that.
Well, she has been an MP since 2010. She knows the difficulties of it. I think the challenges of being in government are very, very different to those in opposition. And I think she's well aware of the antipathy that a lot of people have towards her personally. And I think for anybody, look, politicians are human beings just like anybody else.
Yes, exactly.
And they don't like people hating them or loathing them or whatever. Who does? You'd be a pretty odd person if you just sort of shrugged it all off and it didn't have any impact on you.
The thing is, there was something. You see, you don't know what you're going to say, and you just don't know what you're going to say. And I agree, it's very rude if somebody shouts at somebody in the street. It's a terrible thing. And I think society is becoming more aggressive, and integrity is everything. I care about integrity myself.
Well, now, what do you think about this text I've got here from Sue, who says, nobody knows the circumstances of the man in the van. He could have lost his job because of business taxes, lost a child due to NHS cuts, etc. Don't judge him harshly. It could have been totally out of character. Rachel Reeves did handle it well. Her gender is irrelevant. Well, I don't think her gender is irrelevant completely here. And I think you're looking for excuses for this man where, I don't know his circumstances, but even if he had lost his job because of taxes that she had imposed, does it really excuse being aggressive and swearing at a woman?
No, I don't agree with swearing at all, whether female or male.
No, I like a good swear. I just don't do it on the radio.
In fact, Iain, one or two of your callers swear on the radio.
Well, that does happen occasionally, and we have to deal with that in a number of different ways. But you're not going to do that, are you, Anastasia?
Certainly not. Language matters, whether it's verbal or written.
Thank you very much for your call. Right, here's yet another anonymous one. Honestly, people, come on, put your names to the texts. The politicians themselves spend all... No, we've already done that one, haven't we? So that isn't another anonymous one. Right, let's have a look at this one. Have we done this one before? Carl says, I'd have been a lot less polite than that driver, Iain. Politicians hide behind journalists and workplace visits to avoid the electorate, so it's no wonder on the rare occasion someone gets to call them... they take it. Okay, I think I understand what you mean there, Carl. And this is another one from Claire, who says, I didn't have sympathy, but the more I watch it, she was professional, and ultimately, what do we want from MPs? Yeah, that's a fair point, isn't it? Grace is in Ealing. Hello, Grace.
Hi. He pointed to the flags on his van, and obviously there's a cross in the middle of the flag because Jesus died for all of us to be forgiven for our wrongdoing.
Hang on. I'm going to stop you there.
Go on.
It was an England flag. It was nothing to do with Jesus.
Well, there's a cross in the middle.
Yeah.
Because St. George, who I imagine would have supported chivalry, was commemorating what was done for us by Jesus on the cross. My point being that if we go around blaming politicians for everything we're annoyed about, we might be missing the original point, and we might not be very constructive. I feel that there's this air of wanting to blame other people, be it politicians or migrants, for everything that we're annoyed about, and it's not particularly helpful. So I think that he should be allowed to shout at Rachel Reeves, and I also think that he shouldn't shout at Rachel Reeves. It's not very constructive for us to be angry disagree constantly with other people in the way that certain people seem to do. And I was... Yeah,
but if you know that a politician has imposed a policy which has damaged you, your family, your business, don't people have a right to be angry?
Yeah, well, like I said, they've got a right to be angry, but I would think that it would be better...
Yeah, but don't they have a right to express that anger?
They do have a right to, and I also think that they probably shouldn't. I think there are a lot of things in life where we should have a right to do something, but that doesn't mean it's a good thing to do. I heard someone say that it might be a northern thing, and my grandmother, who was a northerner, taught me manners when I was growing up. I think that it's more constructive maybe to... get your concerns across in a way that is a bit more genial, perhaps. I mean, I'm furious with Rachel Reeves because she has cut aid to people who are the very most disadvantaged in our world. So if I had the chance to talk to her, I might raise that point for the sake of making her more aware of it. But just to shout anger in itself is not massively constructive. And I kind of worry that more and more of our discourse is just anger without much rational discussion. So we're not really making much progress anywhere.
Chris says, massively impressed that Gracie Neely managed to get Jesus in within the first 10 seconds of her call. I was quite impressed by that, if I'm honest, too.
Oh, well, I apologise for being...
No, don't apologise. Let me read another one out, because I want to get your reaction to this from Ollie. Nobody should be abused, full stop. But... you see, if you say full stop, you can't have a but. That doesn't really work, does it? Anyway, it continues. I think what it highlights here is Labour's biggest problem, communication. She couldn't respond in a way that felt natural. She's scared to speak like an actual person. Rachel and Keir have never been able to communicate properly. Yes, the man was out of order, but just fight back. Give him what for, like a normal person would do. You're in the north, says Ollie.
I mean... that wouldn't have been my personal instinct. When I was a kid and I was bullied in primary school, I was told that the best thing to do is not to give a response, because if you respond, then they'll just know that they're getting on your nerves and they'll be more inclined to keep on bullying. So I would have been inclined personally just to ignore it. But I also think that it's a great part of our democracy that we are able to criticise politicians in whatever way, and we're not oppressed in the way that some people elsewhere would be for trying to do that. But I do personally have real issues, like I said, with Rachel Reeves, and I can understand that people are frustrated, but I think more deep discussion about what we're angry about rather than just hurling swear words would probably be more helpful in conveying what we want them to do differently.
Did you see the heckle from the Liberal Democrat MP, I think it was Max Wilkinson, in the comments to Robert Jenrick a couple of days ago, where Jenrick was making a speech, and I think he said, we're here where we are, or something like that. And this Lib Dem MP shouted out, yeah, but you used to be over there. And it completely discombobulated Robert Jenrick. And instead of reacting with humour and actually thinking, yeah, good one, mate, he just couldn't really carry on.
That's interesting. I didn't see that. I ought to try and watch that back.
It'll come up on your Instagram feed if you're on Instagram.
I was reminded earlier of hearing some Americans talking about how they had seen some footage from our House of Commons, and they were just shocked by all the heckling. They thought, how is it that in politics there's all this, riotous going on, and they don't really have that over there? So I suppose we have a great British tradition of people heckling in the Commons, and in America they don't have that, which surprised me to think about, because I tend to think of us British as being more contained than Americans, but I guess I was wrong.
Okay, Grace, thank you very much indeed for that. Thanks for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'll be back on Saturday. I'm standing in for Matt Fry on Saturday morning from 10, so I hope you'll join me for that. If you missed any of this evening's show, you can listen back on our free Global Player app or the LBC app, where you can stay up to date with all the latest news, videos and opinion. Download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Clive Ball, but right now, it's Ben Kentish.
Thanks very much indeed, Ian. Hello there. A very, very good evening this Thursday night. Welcome to Late Night in Kentish.